How's it going, everyone? And welcome to a very tired episode of No Excuses on VTWProductions.com and YouTube.com with your favorite show hosts, RSL.
Arian.
And Volacel and Ari is distinctly lacking in gunpowder today.
Completely,
But we're here to bring you this week's episode of No Excuses, where we will talk about vidya and anything else that crosses our mind. Yeah, the energy levels are low around here right now. It's been a bit of a week. Been a bit of a week. But yeah, if you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcuses.
Yes.
Or you can join us in our Discord server, which you can do by clicking on the link that will be provided in the show description underneath the show archive on YouTube.
Do the thing and join us in our gleeful shitposting.
Yeah, just in case you were wondering how tired we are, I can't even bring myself to do Netflix roulette during the show like we usually do. And that takes as close to zero brain power as you could possibly
Honestly, Netflix roulette some days just takes negative brain power. You need to have something else on the other screen.
If it was a way to guarantee that it wouldn't be Castrum, then sure, fine.
Yeah.
But if it turns out to be Castrum, then you've got to keep moving all the time.
Yeah.
If it turns out to be Castrum, you have to actually be the one that does all the mechanics, because the six other dim chuckleheads in your party are not going to do them.
So, speaking of on the stream, at least to start the name now, I'm actually halfway through Vaness Party, about to do the elephant butt boss. I have never done this boss.
This is not a responsible way to do your first trip through the dungeon. With that's bullying. At least you're only bullying NPCs, right?
I am only bullying NPCs, yes.
Okay.
Justinian, Thancred, and Alphino, because I don't want to bring Alice anyway, because she can't be trusted with a limit break.
Alice is the worst trust companion.
Yeah.
It's not even close. She does the least damage. She eats the limit break bar as soon as she can. Sometimes, on the last boss, she will wait for 2. Although this is not consistent, sometimes she'll steal it at 1 just for funsies.
Yes. Even though she consistently does less damage with the limit break than the Warrior of Light.
And she will get herself killed more than any of the other trusts. And I basically have the other trusts never die. Alice is the only one that has ever just died on her own.
I've never seen a trust die. I've seen me die, but...
I've seen Urianger die.
Oh dear.
I've also seen Urianger kill me.
I have seen Urianger kill me. If there's anyone I trust less in a ironically named trust, then Alice, it's Urianger. That guy's up to something. So... I'm just going to dive into this, because I've never done this boss before. I haven't even looked up strats. I like coming into dungeons blind on the first run with the trust. It's a great system for that.
Yep. The only hint I've given him is the bubbles take a second.
Yeah.
There are PlayStation charms.
PlayStation charms, okay.
Those are on the last boss, though.
Oh, is he on the second boss?
He's on the second boss.
Why did I just click Scattergun? I'm trying to multitask too many directions at once now. This is going to end badly.
Isn't the second boss essentially like it's like the one from Hullbreaker, right?
Yeah, but with the trust, it's pretty much impossible to lose the second boss. You have to be trying to die in that one.
Oh, well, I'm sure Urianger could steal your bubble.
Yeah.
Because he's Urianger, and that's how he rolls.
I have no idea if I did that mechanic
anyway. Right. I've honestly not done a lot of those dungeons with trusts, because I kind of like playing with other people on MMOs. It's just that I got more than anything, I just got really frustrated being a tank and being the only source of AoE. Yeah. Because it makes you a procession
oh shit, did I just get Alphino killed?
But you didn't need him anyway, he's fine.
He's fine. Okay, he's not dead. He's alright. To get coming to the same bubble. I was already on that bubble. So yeah. This is... we'll just dive straight into weeks, I guess, and going to multitask like a demon here, and it's going to end very badly, don't it? But yeah, most of my week I've been dealing with just stuff. Life continues to happen, unfortunately, but I got a little bit of Final Fantasy time in. Finished on the moon. I didn't have as much there left to do as I thought I did. I thought I at least had another dungeon to go.
So how do you feel about the denizens of the moon?
I mean, they kind of mean well, but they're not very good at it.
I think they genuinely mean well. They're just really bad at it.
They're just really
I think they're
bad
hilarious. I love them.
They're cute, and honestly, the sight of a little bunny girl saying "Oh bugger" never gets old. Won't kill Alphino this time.
If rabbits were not soured to me because of the ones that are in my real life, I would have liked them a lot more. But now anything with a rabbit loses at least like 10 points.
I mean, she may not get everything right, but I wish my colleagues had even half the work ethic that Living Way does.
Yeah. At least she tries. And to be fair, their point of contact on Eorzea or on the planet turned out to be a bunch of pompous, stuck-up assholes. So, yeah,
the most anal retentive culture on the planet.
Yeah.
I also like the said anal retentive culture. Their point of contact from outside of this world, which was a bunch of idiot rabbits on the moon.
Yeah. Boss is dead. Okay. I didn't die. I didn't screw it up too badly. Hooray.
It's really hard to die in that boss fight. You can eat the mechanics to the face. I tried it one time, and I ate every single AoE mechanic he had that wasn't that was guaranteed to hit the whole arena, and just ignored the bubbles, and I didn't die.
Oh, okay. But yeah, after you do that, you kind of get a bit of a downtime moment once you get back from the moon, where you get one cutscene where you have a choice of who to talk to. I ended up going back and talking to everyone in this cutscene. And, like, some of them are really...
I figured that I'd just look it up on YouTube later.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are really kind of important story moments or character developments.
Not Astinian.
Not Astinian. I left Astinian to last, particularly because he's Astinian.
I haven't actually seen it. I haven't seen any of them except for... I think I arbitrarily picked Y'shtola because I was sort of like, she's been super, super standoffish the entire story. How is she going to have a moment with the Warrior of Light?
She basically walks in and says, "Hold still, I need to look at your soul to make sure you're not going to explode again."
Yeah. So I guess that's how Y'shtola shows she cares, I suppose.
Yeah. She's got all the clinical attachment of a nurse who's been in her job way too long.
Considering the sort of clowns that she has to work with, I'm not really that surprised.
Yeah. Alphino gets a bit of a character moment. Thancred gets his dad hat back on for a few minutes. I'm not sure what Alizé was doing.
Will they all be unlocked? Have you checked in the inn to see if they're all unlocked when you do it once? Or...
Yeah. Well, you go back into the quest and do cutscene 2. It puts you right at the start of the selection.
Oh, I see.
So you just watch it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Grahatir was hitting on me at that point.
Oh yeah, he definitely.
Well, he's always had that sort of sense about him because he basically worships the ground you walk on.
Yeah,
yeah, he's like a super fan that gets to work for his favorite Idaru.
Yeah,
it's like he's been a simp. He got to be a simp for like 100 years.
Yes,
without any contact. Then all of a sudden he gets to pal around with his idol. I mean, of course he's going to go off the deep end.
And yeah, he's just kind of become this enormous dork who does whatever you really need him to.
Fortunately, I see him as the only viable potential romance option for a female warrior elite of the Scions, because the other ones are just so weird.
Hey, look at it from the male perspective. Your choices are Alizé or Y'shtola.
Ugh.
Yeah.
One of them is a bratty child, and the other one will treat you like a specimen in a jar.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, poor Y'shtola. She's a member of the Scions, and the only colleague that she works with that can match her brain with, if you don't count Kryl, Is Urianger?
Who is odd.
Who is just
at best.
At best.
Is it any wonder she's a little Y'shtola after that?
She's kind of just fed up with the whole thing, I think. But I'm really liking this expansion. It is, like you said a few weeks ago, it's the expansion where kind of your arc as the hero is mostly done, and this is the time for your companions to step up.
Yeah, it's like your ascension to the sort of demigod that you are is completed in Shadowbringers. And who you are as, like, what you represent is well established at the start of Endwalker. And it's sort of like, this is the process of bringing the team to the point where they can meet their fullest potential rather than, you know, the continuing arc of the main character. Because you don't really change. Like, from what I can remember, it's starting to get a bit fuzzy now, and I'm starting to crave a replay, to be honest. But from what I remember, you don't really change much. Depending on how you answer the final question, you could say that for some people that would represent a change, and for others it won't represent any change, just an acknowledgement of what was always true, depending on the way you decide to read it. It's very open-ended. The idea that there's a strict interpretation is just silly. But generally speaking, it's not actually your story in a sense. It's like you've become the person that you need to be to close the story.
Yeah. Also, yes, if people are watching me play and are cringing at my bad gameplay, shut up.
It can't be much worse than mine.
I mean, I basically did an AoE phase there where I was just mashing random buttons, so...
I fell to my death so many times this morning.
Oh, look! A tooth noodle!
What about Tooth Noodle? Oh, the last boss.
The last boss, he's a tooth noodle.
Yeah. Everything has teeth. I think of it as the Lamu dungeon because of the Lamu in Babylonia Singularity in FGO.
Yeah, I got that vibe big time from some of the trash going up to the first boss and the first boss itself.
Yep.
Well, the scenarios are also kind of similar, in a way. Like, Babylonia is basically about the end of the world.
So this dungeon keeps giving me healing gear.
And Endwalker is essentially about the end of the world also.
And it has people turned into teeth monsters.
Yes, people do randomly explode.
Alright.
And teeth monsters appear everywhere. And some of them do JoJo poses for no adequately explained reason.
I mean, yeah. Just looking at this arena, I think you mentioned a color mechanic. I can sort of see what might be doing here. So
the squares on the floor are important, and you can match them to something else.
90% of the time, if there's squares laid out in a neat pattern on the floor of a boss arena, they're important.
The hint I'll give you.
Think about the way the mechanic worked in Zodiac and how you might apply something with a floor grid in a similar way.
Oh yeah, rotating arena again?
No, it's not going to rotate. It won't do that.
Oh good.
Just
you'll see what I mean.
Okay, I'm going to die then.
You do not want to match. There you go. That's your hit.
Right. Okay. This is going to go absolutely appallingly bad, isn't it?
It's a cool fight. I quite like it.
Right, going in.
Quite a number of ways to screw up if you had with a team of real people, though.
Yeah, if you're with a Brazilian Dragoon that won't talk in chat and dies in the first several seconds of the fight, then that's a problem.
Dragoon.
BR.
The guy that won't talk in chat, and despite how everybody in the rest of the team is acting like his mom, the healer is bad and dying too, but they're staying alive long enough where you could beat the fight if the Dragoon would just say something about how they're dying, literally every single mechanic.
I think I did that wrong. I just got seriously owied.
Get a Vuln stack? If you didn't get a Vuln stack, you did it right.
Oh, okay. So you are supposed to lose great wadges of health.
Oh yeah, the bosses are not the starter expansion stuff, so your gear scaling is gone.
To be fair, the starter expansion boss for this one was pretty beefy.
Well, even when your gear starts to scale, I'm sure the prancing boss will still be horrible.
Yeah.
That you haven't done them yet, but there is the third to last dungeon
Warm glow.
launch has it has an ability called Warm Glow, which sounds real friendly but is a real not and causes healers to have a heart attack.
It causes the Helios button to get mashed really hard, is what it does.
That's... Yeah, okay, I have no idea if I did that right. I don't have any vulnerability stacks, so that's something at least.
If you have no vuln stacks, you're good.
Right.
There will be points in the fight where if you do a mechanic wrong and then you get the vuln stack, you're just dead because the next mechanic comes out right away.
Which is the one he's doing right now. He's going to drop meteors. Okay.
He'll figure it out. It's really intuitive.
Yeah, it's pretty heavily telegraphed.
Yeah, that part's the easy part. Although, I like to save sprint for it because of the third set of meteors.
Yeah, I just ran through that. I didn't sprint, but I made it.
Yeah,
so yeah,
I like to save sprint so I don't have to think about it.
So yeah, getting back onto the weeks, I guess, my Final Fantasy story at this point is where we're up to now. I came in this morning, and everything immediately hit the fan. Now the world's on fire and there's teeth monsters running around.
Yeah, you're now at the point in the story that started back when you did the Zodiac fight, where shit just keeps getting realer.
Yep.
And it won't stop until the end.
Yeah. You're now going to be placed on the realness escalator, and you do not get to get off.
I'm dead.
Oh, did you die?
Oh yeah, I died. Something smushed me.
Yeah, if you do after the meteor phase, he will, after every single one of his key mechanic there, he will put a meteor on everybody's head, which means if you're in a trust, if you don't do the mechanic that precedes it correctly, you're dead.
Right. Alright, we'll see. I know I'm not playing my best because I'm multitasking like 4 different ways at the moment. Yeah. But, yeah, really enjoying the way that the story has escalated. You kind of had that bit of a big emotional moment or a big story moment with the Zodiac. Then you had a light, silly moment with the bunnies.
Yeah, the bunnies are a way to do a bit of lore dumping on you while chilling the tone out for the incoming literal apocalypse.
Yeah.
You forgot about Best Doggo.
And Best Doggo, the fanciest Doggo, who is the goodest flying boy.
Yeah, I had a feeling, Fern, that you would be all over the Doggo as soon as you met it.
I honestly was not expecting a Doggo randomly being on the moon. It's just
Argo's best boy, or whatever his name is.
Argos, yeah. But I do appreciate you can actually go and try and pat him at any point during the quests that you do with him.
Well, he's decidedly unamused.
He is decidedly unamused by the entirety of it.
But the game does give you the ability to pet Doggo.
You can pet the Doggo. Okay, I might actually focus on what I'm doing here at the moment. So while I do have another bit of content for my week, I'm going to toss it to you, Vol, while I do this boss.
Oh, I don't know how I'm going to entertain you in the meantime, because, yeah, I didn't do a huge amount this week. Although, it's not like I was as busy this week as last week. It wasn't quite as brutal. I did have the ability to take a breath. However, that didn't really amount to much in the end. Number one, because I was still exhausted from the previous week, and number two, because the Amazons event in FGO is the most exhausting, burnout-inducing event that I have played since the first run of Sunzan going to the West. It was just absolutely freaking brutal. 200 floors.
Do they continue that event strategy type after this one?
I don't know. They might. I don't know. They've done it twice only in the West. I don't know if they did another one. They never rerun them. And I don't know if they've done another one in Japan or not, because I don't remember exactly. But it is unbelievably abusive. And unfortunately, they put a lot of unfarmables near the top of the second tower. Like your gold foos and stuff. It's not like some really grindy events like points farming ladders and that. The top like 5 rungs of the ladder will just be QP. And because QP is farmable, I don't regard that as necessary. Because, I mean, realistically, any player has as many QP as apples that they want to pump into door farming, right? So if you need QP, you can get it. Nothing's stopping you. Unfortunately, this is not like that, and all of your servants that get used will go on to cooldown after 1 use. And they will stay on cooldown for 6 hours. 3 if you put them in a resting facility, and 2 if you put them in a resting facility they have an affinity for. And you can cool down faster 5 servants at a time. So not a huge number. This basically means that you have to use your entire roster, and you want to start at the lower levels. You want to be using your weaker servants, and you want to basically create teams of 3 that don't need any backline and can get through on their own without getting murdered. And having done that, they'll go on cooldown, then you move on to the next one, which means you're constantly reformulating teams, and you have a very, very strong incentive to get things on cooldown. If you have a schedule like mine, then you can play it roughly 1 time of the day, which is after work. And since like 6 hours after I get home, I'm going to be asleep, I can't stop playing. I've got to put as many things on cooldown as possible, because I'm not going to be able to come back at some other time later and play more. That's just the way it is. That's the way the event is structured, meaning that I end up playing a huge amount in a stint where I'm constantly devising new teams and pushing forward in the content constantly, making it very, very tiring because there are 200 regular stages. Now, that would be bad enough in and of itself, except at the end there are raids as well, which have the same constraints. That an attempt on the raid is going to put those servants that attempted it on cooldown. And all the damage that you deal is cumulative, but of course it's a raid monster, so you pretty much need class advantage. So eventually you end up just throwing every appropriate class at the wall and hoping you can find something that will stick and do a reasonable amount of damage. And then, once all that's done, there's still a challenge quest at the end. And the worst part, of course, is Berserker stages, because oftentimes things will go very badly and you'll have to restart because everybody gets insta-jibbed by a Berserker crit. You can't really get class advantage against them unless you've got tons of foreigners, and nobody has tons of foreigners because there aren't tons of foreigners in the game. So yeah, it was extremely exhausting. I managed to clear the challenge quest just before the show, but it was not fun in the slightest, because its only real mechanic is a boss that has a big health bar and has a 100% crit rate. So anytime it touches a servant, they basically just die unless they're completely coated in defensive buffs or actually invulnerable. So yeah, the whole event was not very entertaining. The story was incredibly dumb and pretty much laser focused just on Penthesilea. And not only that, but mostly laser focused on Servant Universe Penthesilea, who I don't care about at all, because it's a Servant Universe character that rarely ever appears, and was basically just a gag character during Osaka Behime's Halloween event. But yeah, so overall the event was a damp squid, and if you were ever going to burn out on FGO, this event would definitely burn you out.
Given the context that it was released in, it seems like something the dev team put together just to fill the gap between Part 1 and Part 2 of the Lost Belts when they needed to put more dev time onto Part 2.
Yeah, well, the thing is that there's also Valentine's is coming up. That will be the next event. So it just seems sort of unnecessary. Like, I don't think they really even needed an event in here, but I know that the people who play through the content really fast are constantly whinging about not having enough content to play. But compared to the Setsubun event, this is not very good. The Setsubun event was genuinely about character development. It develops the characters of Shuten and Tomoe in particular, and it's the actual ones, not some random servant universe version of them. And there's a lot of nuance to Shuten's character in particular because she's a monster. She's one of a handful of characters who is genuinely a monster, acts like a monster, and isn't just like Gorgon is. Gorgon likes to claim she's a monster, but she's just a tsundere, ultimately.
She's got a mostly human heart to her.
Yeah. Shuten doesn't. Shuten thinks of humans as food most of the time. And there are exceptions to this that she is having difficulty processing because she's an Oni. Like she knows that she's fond of Kintoki, but she has no idea if that's because she actually likes him or because he's delicious. Because she doesn't have any reference point being completely inhuman.
Yeah, focusing on the fact that monsters that are not humanity would in fact think differently from humanity too. That kind of thing.
Like she doesn't have any mental distinction at all between wanting to be with someone and wanting to eat them. There's just no difference between those two concepts for her, except that she's surrounded by people for whom they are categorically different, and is being constantly exposed to that sort of makes her question who she is, and being exposed to someone who's got sort of one foot in both worlds like Tomoe cause her to question it even more. But as the short version is that even though that is the previous tower event that was also very, very rough, number one, there were no raids at the end, and number two, it actually had interesting character development for characters that people like, as opposed to a character who basically is a gag. So yeah, I didn't like anything about this event. It was a horrible experience, and I don't want to ever experience it again, and I won't because they've never repeated this event. So obviously it can't have been received all that well. So yeah, that's FGO. I don't want to go back. I didn't have time to play much Final Fantasy over the course of the week because of the burden placed upon me by the FGO event. But unfortunately, it backs directly onto Valentine's, so that's probably going to be the next one.
Hey, we had enough time this week to complete an entire epic quest chain in FGO, or not FGO, in Final Fantasy 14. What you talking about, Willis?
I wouldn't call that epic. I would call that me falling to my death repeatedly and such like.
Sounds like business as usual then.
Never mind that it only took like not even an hour, but at one time it was a big long epic quest chain.
Yes, and in fact it was the sort of thing that would take you an entire expansion to do. But not anymore, I guess. But yeah. So Ari and I decided that we were going to complete our Lana collections, and made the arbitrary decision to just go and beat down the various bosses that we hadn't managed to acquire Lanas for yet.
We got them really fast, all things considered. Only one boss was a pain in the butt about it.
Yeah, well, they've dramatically increased the drop rate, like dramatically.
Dramatically, yeah.
I've increased by like 100 times.
I've soloed a couple of them. I tried to solo Knights of the Round, but I think I'm missing something with those guys.
You shouldn't have much trouble soloing Knights of the Round. It will always take a long time. There is no way to make it quick.
Yeah. I just keep running into a mechanic where it just resets, so I'm forgetting something.
Right? It resets. Like, it doesn't even kill you? You just
I think it kills me,
reset?
but... Yeah.
Because he does have one lethal ability. It's lethal to non-tanks, but to a tank it will remove, maybe 120,000 hit points, which is more than the hit points of most non-tanks.
Yep.
Yeah, his tank buster hits like a truck, but you can all tanks have enough sustain to just fix the problem right after.
As a tank, I have never seen him use it more than once per fight, and he always uses it after the Knights of the Round sequence in the middle of the fight. And the Knights will come from behind. They will stun you, and then he will use a heal kick ability that has a really slow cast, and sometimes you will come out of your stun before that happens, and sometimes you will come out of it at the same time, at which point it's a crapshoot whether or not you can get a defensive up in time. But I'm not quite sure how you're supposed to stop that. Since I can power through it as a tank, I haven't looked into the way that you're supposed to do it. But it is definitely soloable. It's just a matter of ironing out a few of the little bits and pieces.
Yeah, I haven't really gone too hard. But I'd sit down and figure it out.
I have soloed that one 8 times now, I think.
Yeah. I can solo all the Heavensward Extreme trials except for Sephiroth.
I reckon that if I practice Sephiroth enough, I could probably find a way through, but it's just not worth the effort.
Sephiroth's worth doing just for his soundtrack.
Well, Sephiroth has a mechanic that practically insta-kills you. It's not a true insta-kill, but it's close enough that it doesn't matter with his color-coded mechanic, because you can only have one debuff, and it only protects you from one of his 2 attack types, and the other attack gets to go rampant and do full damage to you. Because there's nobody there to deal with it, because there's not a second player to be the opposite color.
I think that if I could work out the timing for it, then I could just home gang through it and then heal up afterward. I think the same would apply to Hallowed Ground.
Probably, yeah, if you get your timing right.
Yeah.
The question when you're powering through a boss with really high DPS due to being unsynced, you're never 100% sure when something is going to come out because you're proceeding way too fast.
As we've tried to figure out today with the second one of the Warring Triad. Because Sophia will... we were DPSing her so fast. I was on my summoner and he was on his warrior. That before she could do any mechanics where she puts the scales on, most of the time she would just... Her first mechanic would be to stop, summon the ads for the ad phase, and then attach the scales to the platform. But we could not work out the trigger for this, because sometimes if we were derping around or Carbuncle got desummoned because I fell off the platform like a dum-dum, she would do a phase where she creates clones of herself, and she apparently cannot stop doing this phase until it's done, which means she can't attach the scales.
Yeah, so basically you can shorten the scales phase, it seems, by going easy on DPS right out the gate. And then she will go into a different phase rather than her ad phase, because the ad phase is always followed by the scales phase. But you can delay the ad phase significantly by not blitzing her straight away.
Yeah, if you wait for her to create the clones that do their abilities, she has to wait for this ability to finish before she does anything else.
Yeah, and it's a difference between doing like 30% of her health during the scales phase and doing 65% of her health during the scales phase. And the scales phase can go very badly, very easy, depending on how attentive you are.
Yeah, the scale phase, if you have a brain fart, or you can't count, or she just decides to drop the meteors on the scales more often, you can go flying off the platform, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah, we did have her pull out the meteors once completely at random. That we totally didn't expect.
We have no idea what the timings on those scale tips are and how they're supposed to work, because she didn't seem to have a pattern for anything in Phase 2. She was doing stuff consistently for about 4 attempts. And then she just started doing random other stuff.
It's a cool fight, though. I expect it would have been quite challenging and interesting at the time. But at any rate, we killed her 10 times to get our 2 whistles.
Yeah, didn't take us very, very long. She took us the longest, about 35 minutes total to get both of our whistles.
Like, before the buff, it took me like 20 kills of Leviathan to get his whistle, but I got Bismarck's in like 3.
Yeah, and Zervin was just sad.
Oh yeah, there's not even... I soloed that on my summoner before we went there to get our whistles, because he's so easy.
But it was a question of like, how low can we get him before the actual fight starts?
Yeah, we were trying to see if we could get him down to as close to dead as possible before.
I think we got him down to 23% before the actual fight started.
Yeah, we chunked off 3/4 of this guy's HP during the free DPS phase at the start.
Poor bastard.
He got stomped.
Yeah, his whole thing must just be really high damage output for the time he was released, because he doesn't have time to do anything.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was basically it. And I have not had much time to play Final Fantasy. But, I mean, like I've said many a time before, it's a game that is very generous to you in terms of not trying to make you play it every day the way World of Warcraft tries to make you obsess over logging in every day and doing your dailies.
If you take a week off, the game's still there. It doesn't matter.
if FF does nothing to pressure you, and I mean that's been made very evident by what Yoshi P and others in the development team have said, in that they think it's not healthy to be a mono gamer.
Agree with that.
You should not just have one game to play, but because that's their attitude going in, they don't put in all of these mechanics that try and turn you into a performance metric. Which is like Blizzard's favorite thing to do, right? Is to turn people into performance metrics for their product.
Yeah.
So,
congratulations, number.
So if you have a busy week like we did this week, if all you have time to do is get on and like farm a couple drops on your one-off day before you go do something else, that's fine. You don't really miss anything unless you're Prograding Savage, which not many people are doing.
Well, there's a lot of people doing it. It's a very popular activity, and the thing with Prograding Savage is that basically the only way to do it is to get in on the ground floor. If you don't have a free company, you can do it as a Ronin, but you have to get in on the ground floor, because there will be lots of public party finder groups that are open for learners, and there's usually a couple of vets there who are just teaching for the fun of teaching. It's an odd community in that way. It's sad that that's odd, but it's an odd community in that way, that there will be vets who will just join learner groups or form learner groups for people to learn Savage fights, and will give advice and instruction. They'll progress the fight and make as much headway as they can on it. And the thing with the party finder mechanic in Final Fantasy XIV is that almost uniquely, if there is a role open and you sign up, you get the slot. There's no scrutinizing the people who apply. You set the requirements when you create the party, and if somebody fits the bill, they can join. Period. End.
Yep.
So the environment is calibrated such that expectations are, I don't want to say expectations are low, because that leaves the wrong impression, but expectations are not like looking for group in Wrath of the Lich King, where people want an Ice Crown Citadel, they want Ice Crown Citadel gear to do a heroic dungeon.
I remember those days.
So Wrath of the Lich King days in WoW were especially bad with that type of thing, and I think it was because just the pool of people that was always looking to do something was a large enough number of people that people could afford to be that type of critical about who they took. And people in WoW were so dumb because none of the mechanics were dangerous enough that somebody else in the group couldn't pick up the weight and just carry you through it. In Final Fantasy, it started off with a smaller population, so you kind of had to take what you could get, and the mechanics were all lethal enough in Final Fantasy, at least when they were relevant, that you had to know how to not stand in the fire. Otherwise, you're not making it to max level.
Yeah, so there are in truth a lot of people who are progressing Savage who are just by themselves and learning to play. There's a lot of customary stuff and lingo and just sort of weird heuristics that develop in the community that you need to learn in order to participate in that. And you also do need to be actually good at the game, which I'm not. So I'm not really that interested in progressing my play to that level, though. The trial extremes are easier than Savage fights. So it's conceivable that if I really want to knuckle down and play, and for some reason work has become less onerous for me, then maybe I might delve into that at some point, but I'm in no hurry to do that. The game has so much to do outside of that I'm just not too troubled, to be totally honest.
Honestly, I just appreciate...
Just gonna take it easy. Do what I want at the pace that I feel like doing it.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to play an MMO, because I did the Mythic Raider thing. Yeah. I did it for quite a long time, and I think I've had my fill of that for one lifetime. Thanks so very much.
I really appreciate just how accessible even Savage is. It's like, it doesn't need to be an all-night commitment. Spend an hour and do one section. Or even one or two bosses if you really want to.
Yeah, and what's more, you're doing more meaningful stuff there as well. Like, people have often voiced the asinine opinion that, Final Fantasy raids are obviously easier than WoW raids by reason of, look at the clear time on the race to world first. The thing is that all of the progress to world first for a Final Fantasy group is, number one, the game cultivates a tactically stronger player base. There are more people competing, generally speaking, and idle practice in general gameplay is going to be with better people, generally speaking. But more than that, the structure of raids is such that all of the time spent progressing is focused progress.
Yeah,
there is no re-clearing the trash. There is no doing the fight in 1 week and then having to redo that fight the next week before you can get back up to the boss that you want to progress. There's none of this commit to 2 hours worth of progress on stuff that isn't your progression content before you can start to practice your progression content in the 30 minutes left that day. That stuff doesn't happen in Final Fantasy XIV because of the structure of raiding. And the net result of that is that everybody is better at high-end raiding, and generally speaking, the best players will clear content within a matter of hours or maybe a day or two, typically, rather than within weeks. There's also a lot less bullshit time gating.
Oh, the time gating was...
But yeah, generally speaking, Final Fantasy XIV has thought a lot more about what's accessible. And, you know, they also cribbed their gearing system right out of MOP when gearing made sense.
Yes.
So, yeah. I guess the current WoW team should probably relearn that lesson, because apparently the gearing that they are bringing in with their new patch, the final patch of Shadowlands, is a complete abomination.
Yeah. So. There's been some interesting takes on that, so come back to that.
I can't say I know a huge amount about it, other than people are very upset. But yeah. So yeah, that's a thing. What else have I done? I sort of meant to start dabbling in a bit of the new anime for the season. I haven't really made much progress, largely due to a chronic lack of motivation. So what have I looked at so far? Not very much. I watched arbitrarily, because it's sort of become customary now, the latest season of Sayuki Reload that has been animated. And Sayuki is a very weird anime, based on a manga that's, you know, I think gives me the distinct impression was written for Fujoshi, but they seem to, when animating, just arbitrarily select a random arc from the story and animate it. Like, there's no chronological progression between arcs throughout the course of the anime that have been released, which have been continuously released sort of like a season here, a season there, for like the past 15 years or something. And again, we've got now another arc, which is actually from somewhere near the earlier part of the story. In the early stages of Sayuki Reload's run, it's the arc focusing on Ukoku, the sort of heretical Sanzo. But ultimately, it's still the same old Sayuki anime, in that the production values are trash. It takes all the worst shortcuts imaginable, and the soundtrack is right out of the early 2000s. It's not good in any way, but I'm watching it because I watched the last one, so
you're committed at this point.
Yeah, I have a few of the manga before it became difficult to get them, because it's sort of interesting and entertaining at times. It's quite funny at times, although it does end up being a bit one note. But yeah, I did watch it. It's nothing to write home about. Unless you're already a fanatic of the series, there's really no reason to be excited about it. As out of a form of sort of like bile fascination, I started watching the second season of Arifuruta, and I would never recommend the series to anyone unless you actually like cringe.
Nobody actually,
because this is like, I'm trying to think about how I can express what this series is, because it's an isekai for starters, but it basically takes every isekai trope to its cringiest extent while completely taking itself seriously.
There's a lot of booby ladies on the cover for this anime.
Yeah.
This honestly sounds dreadful.
I'm not really sure quite how to express it, but basically the main character is a humongous toony edgelord, but not in a funny way, in a way that it's played entirely straight. And he's basically scowling all the time. So the rough outline of the story from the first season is that the main character and his entire class get isekai'd.
Oh, that's that one. No, wait.
That they all end up being given job roles, RPG job roles essentially, which range from good to incredibly crap. And they've got to, do dungeons and level up and whatnot because it's their job to save the kingdom or whatever. And for reasons that aren't clear, because presumably they'll be clarified later in the story, it seems roughly speaking that the girl who harbors affection for the main character there's another guy who's got a crush on her, and he's decided that he's entitled to her, so decided to off the main character because the main character is the target of her affections. And so he does that, and the main character basically ends up in the bowels of the freaking earth for months and survives through sheer hatred and stubbornness for what's happened to him. And this basically turns into a humongous OP god-moding hacker Mary Sue edgelord.
There it is.
With the attendant vampire girlfriend that he acquires in the bowels of the earth somehow. And so on. And it doesn't get any less edgy or less cringy from there. It's horrible. And I keep watching it because I'm like, is it going to redeem itself or find a new and fascinating way to become disgustingly cringier?
Seems like the latter.
Like I rather than not recommending this, I would actively dissuade people from wasting their time on it, because the only reason I'm wasting my time on it is because I want to see if it can get even worse.
Oh my goodness, that is a edgy look our protag has here. And a very creepy smile.
You think that you can tell that he's edgy, but he gets more cliche every episode. And it's not it thinks it's being self-aware. Somehow the writing thinks it's being self-aware, but it's sort of like a half pie self-awareness that doesn't realize the true extent of its own cringe.
I stood from a picture I just dug out of the wiki of our protag coon.
Literally written by Hans Grader.
It gives the distinct impression that this may in fact be the case. Like it's, I don't know how you could be this stereotypical and still be completely self-unaware, as it were.
Some autists must love this show because it actually has a fairly article-populated wiki.
Someone is shitty and cringy enough to actually...
Well, yeah, there are 703 pages on the wiki.
It's probably all the work of one fanatical person.
Yeah, they have a public edit page here. I can tell you if I can find it.
But yeah,
yeah, one guy has like over half the edits on the wiki.
Yeah, there you go.
You cannot like this show if you have anything that even in a bad light would pass for taste.
Not even bad taste. There's bad taste, and then there's this.
It's deeply awful, deeply awful, and don't watch it. That's all. That's all I can really say. Don't watch it. Like I would, like if I was going, rather than being fascinated by how horrid it is, In Another World with my smartphone is actually more entertaining.
Doesn't try to be anything other than terrible.
Well, the thing is that there's a certain sincerity to it. Like it is incredibly by the numbers, but at least it makes sort of a loose attempt at being endearing in certain ways. Not a very successful one, but it's got more sincerity to it, and it's aware that it's being a genre exercise in a lot of ways also. But this one is just like, there is no way. Well, I would applaud this show under one condition, and that's that this is all an elaborate troll.
The the cover.
I think that might be giving it too much credit.
The cover image on Honest Bob's looks like just a generic ecchi anime.
It's not actually very ecchi. It's certainly got lots of, big boobed, scantily clad the females crowding around the main character. That's definitely true. However, even so, they don't spend any time dwelling on that, really.
Yeah, it doesn't have the ecchi tag. It's just that's what that cover reminds me of.
If they invested time in being pervy, they would have less time to talk about how incredible the main character is and what a badass he is and how edgy he is. So it would be a waste of time to look at something like mere boobs when instead we could be gushing about the main character. That's self-unaware.
It sounds to me like it would be more interesting to explore the details of the cleavage of the blue-haired lady on the left of that picture I posted than it would be to explore this main character.
Yeah, I can't remember her story other than she's got superhuman strength and seems to have some sort of short-term precognition, like she seems to sense things are about to happen before they happen. I don't know if they've given a good explanation for that or what.
Oh, I was talking about her boobs, not her as a character.
Well, I know, but when I say that, that means that she has more depth than the main character does. Because the only depth the main character has is OP and always angry at everyone and everything at all times for no reason.
I can handle an angry character if the story is about them learning to learn how being angry is wrong.
No, he's not learning anything about being angry. Yeah, he's just angry because his character is scowl. His character is to scowl at things. That's his whole character. And he, in fact, will stop being angry for no reason whenever a gag requires it. So, there's no consistency to it, and it's dumb. It's dumb, and I resent even having to talk about it.
But yet you continue to watch it.
But, I also I watched a bit of The Genius Prince's Guide to Raising a Country Out of Debt, and it's extraordinarily similar to something else, but I can't remember what it was called. But the short version is that he's a prince of a country. His father is very, very sick, and so he's been made Prince Regent and has to take care of the country, and he has absolutely no interest in doing it. He doesn't want to be a royal. He doesn't want to have the country depending on him. He just wants to get a lot of money and go and retire somewhere where nobody knows him and will expect anything of him. He's a useless waste drawer, but unfortunately for him, he's also quite clever and well educated, and so in his loose plan is to basically find a way to politically sell the country off, make a lot of money in the process, and then disappear. Right. The thing is that in order to do that, his country needs to be worth a damn, and so he tries to arrange situations such that his country is at least appealing enough that he can get a good price for it. So he basically keeps trying to set up cunning plans that will result in him being successful right up until he fails miserably so that he can then sue for peace.
It is,
But he's just slightly too clever for his own good, and he keeps being successful. And his despair heightens every time he realizes that people are going to count on him even more now, and his country keeps prospering out of his failed attempts to fail.
It sounds like the producer's plot.
So you want me to...
It's sort of a bit like that, yeah.
Yeah.
You want me to make you feel really bad about the anime this season? And more sad about the people that watch anime
It's all
this
isekai.
Season?
It's just all isekai.
No. Why is the video auto-playing? The first episode of whatever the heck show you were talking about before this one, I already forgot its name, had a rating of 9.3 from the community on Honest Bob's, and this new show has a rating of 8.9 out of 10. That you're talking about. So people like the terrible edgelordy thing 0.4 points more than the one you're talking about right now.
Well, I'm not saying that the one I'm talking about right now is good. In fact, it feels like a carbon copy of something else. I just can't remember exactly what. But
no, it was just the last show you were talking about is a 9.3 out of 10 according to the Honest Bobs.
Deeply awful in every conceivable way. But yeah, so where was I? Genius Prince's Guide to Raising a Nation Out of Debt is not good by any stretch of the imagination, but it's also not offensively bad like the last one I was talking about. It's just merely not that groundbreaking, not that interesting. But yeah, I guess it's got room to progress. It's clearly supposed to be placing the prince and his aide, who is, well, basically in any other setting she would be his love interest, but she's hell-bent on not being his love interest because she's of a ostracized social caste, and if she were ever to win his heart to the extent that he wanted her to become queen and made her the queen, then politically she would be forced to commit ritual suicide because she's filthy, according to the culture of the world. Like it would be assumed by everybody that she was sort of an evil, conniving seductress, and therefore she needs to die. So there's sort of an awkward situation there where they're platonic but not. But yeah, I don't know where the story is going, or it thinks it can go. I think that it would benefit from an increasingly escalating hijinks, but I don't think that they'll quite go that way. It looks like it's got too many classical light novel trappings for that. I also started watching the anime for Girls Frontline, because I have a certain amount of affection for it from having played the mobile game Once Upon a Time, which is interesting.
Gacha game anime can be a mixed bag.
Yeah, well, this one strikes me as being very, very, very like the first Azure Lane anime, in that it's not very well written and not very well animated. The characters' designs are generally disappointing because, well, the thing with most mobile games is that the waifu characters, or in this case raifus as they call them, are, of course, they're single frame pieces of art in the mobile game, so they get lavishly illustrated. In the case of an anime, you can't do that because they have to move. So in practice, it just doesn't look very good at all. The thing that sticks with me the most about the series is that the starting and finishing songs are quite catchy. The part in the middle between the starting and finishing song, not quite so much. It seems to be an adequate retelling of an almost impenetrable story. It's not quite as impenetrable as the Azure Lane story, which makes no sense at all because there's like 7 different timelines that are mutually exclusive and yet all woven together, or something. But yeah, it's just basically an opportunity to see characters that may or may not be fan favorites depending on who you are, or what guns you like. It's fan service for the fans of the mobile game, and that's basically it. Doesn't really have much to commend it outside that. The one thing that was interesting was their decision on what to do with Protag-kun. Protag-kun in FGO's anime, they have chosen, for reasons that completely escape me since it was not encouraged by the game writers, they've made the most bland version of Fujimaru into the protagonist for all the animated FGO. Bland and uninteresting and flat. They were encouraged to use the more comedic version of Fujimaru by the game writers, but chose not to in the animation production. And my favourite would have been to see probably the Turas Rialto version of him, because he's the most interesting there. But generally speaking, that's the way they've done an FGO. By contrast, in Kantai Collection and in Azure Lane, they remove the commander entirely. The commander is always away, or not on screen, or in shadow, or out of shot, or whatever, and never says anything, or has any direct interaction with the cast because he's the player, right?
Yeah.
And they just let's just not make it difficult for everybody. And we'll just make him off screen. So when say in Kantai Collection, when Congo makes her grand entrance into the Admiral's office and tries to flying tackle hug him, because that's the sort of character Congo is, she ends up colliding with Yodo instead. Well, she calls her Yodo, but her name is Oyodo, but Congo never calls anybody by their correct name. And she just happens by chance to be the one who's there instead of the Admiral. So it always plays out like this. And Azure Lane and Azure Lane actually at times straight up substitutes cast characters for command roles as well. Like Nagato, for instance, might be in that role. So they basically avoid the player character question entirely. Now, Girls Frontline has taken a totally different tack and have just written a new character to be the leader, to be the commander.
Sounds like doing things the hardest way possible.
But it's actually more interesting that way. I mean, it's not like the writing is great or anything. It's not the most interesting character in the world. But because she is a character, the way the other characters move around her makes more sense. And it also gives them an exposition voice without paralyzing one of the main characters in the cast who, because of the nature of the story, most of them just aren't that clever. And clarifies a bunch of things about the story as well. Like the Raifus in the case of Girls Frontline, especially the way it's portrayed in the anime, they're in sort of a post-apocalyptic, not like heavily post-apocalyptic, but definitely post-apocalyptic sort of setting where the Sangvisferi combat dolls have basically run amok. They are under the orders of goodness only knows who. That's one of the grand mysteries of the early story, at least, is that nobody knows why Sangvisferi has gone off on its own and is serving its own agenda. And they have all of the modern high-tech dolls that were used for combat. And what is left is a bunch of surplus, basically, out-of-date military surplus, which is what Griffin and Kruger have at their disposal, and Griffin and Kruger are the main military corps that are serving as the opposition to Sangvisferi. And so they're taking civilian androids and retrofitting them for combat using antique weaponry, because it's all that there is, since Sangvisferi basically had a monopoly on weaponry, on modern weaponry. But generally it seems to be that the paradigm at play is the more human-like the soldier, the better soldier that they are. So the non-combat androids who were designed to be able to pass as humans in society are better at combat, generally speaking, than the mass-produced, much higher-tech Sangvisferi. But, of course, you can't replace them nearly as easily. So they've created in the main character a character who's basically... She's got her own sort of character traits. She's very highly commended in her sort of academy training, but has very little actual experience. She is a prodigy as far as combat's concerned, but doesn't have the sort of adaptation to actual combat situations that is necessary to be a truly superb commander. And she tends to get attached to the dolls because they're so human-like and treats them like human soldiers, which is good for their morale, but kind of inefficient in a lot of other ways. So basically they've created this character whole cloth and allows the main character to actually play a role in the story in a way that, honestly, in other similar anime, the main character just doesn't. Like, they sort of venture down that path a bit with Fujimaru a couple of times in Babylonia and in Solomon, but it's never really that successful because the character is so flat that nobody feels an affinity for him.
Yeah. The only type of blank slate protag that has ever left any kind of impact on me is season 2 Yu Narukami.
Because that was basically the character that you would have gotten if for Fujimaru they had chosen like B option Fujimaru.
Yeah, and I think that reason's why they probably recommended they go with B option. I don't know why they didn't.
Yeah. They also
it is more work to write that character. Definitely more work to write that character well. but the payoff would have been so much higher. And I think that they were probably just thinking in the efficiency terms of, well, even though the payoff in terms of writing quality would be higher if we wrote B option Fujimaru, the number of people watching the show would not change because the people watching the show are FGO fans.
Yeah. It's just I just love season 2 Narukami. I just imagining him flying off the water towards the waterfall after Chie kicks him, and all the rest of the boys with all the other ones screaming. Not Narukami.
No. That's the other thing they did with him. He takes all the B options, but he's also leaning on the blank slate character. So everything he does completely deadpan.
Total deadpan.
It turns into comedic deadpan, and it's clearly very intentional.
And it's
when they
brilliant.
figured out they could get away with this. And it took them a whole season to figure out this is where they wanted to go with him, too.
And they made a meme legend for it.
Yeah.
But
the entire bar scene.
Oh, the King's Game.
Yes.
Yeah. How he gets drunk off juice.
Unbutton his shirt. Waves in the wind.
That's super common, apparently, according to people that I've talked to who have known underage drinking teenagers who think they're drinking but actually aren't. They do get drunk off the atmosphere. It's definitely a real thing.
It's kind of funny.
But yeah. I think the one that sort of I found the most confusing, because I haven't played Precon, so I don't know what the story does. But
so, Protag Pinecone basically doesn't exist.
The protag in the anime is incredibly
retarded.
Yeah, like literally retarded. Like, I'm not talking figuratively retarded.
He tries to eat money.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
Like he has the intellect of a toddler.
Yeah, I don't know if it's quite that bad in the game. I'm not up to date on the story of Pinecone, but the protag is pretty thick when he wakes up from his coma, but he just has this preternatural ability to make friends with women. And that's his only saving grace. Otherwise, he's completely helpless at everything he does. But he's not quite as stupid as he is. Like, he's not a literal, mental retard.
Idiot. Yeah.
He's really, really dumb, though. He gets a little better, but not by much.
That's why I couldn't really watch the anime, because I did start watching the anime when the first season came out. I think the second season might be airing now, actually.
It is.
But I couldn't watch it because he was just such a distraction, I suppose, from the rest of the story. Because everything is moving around him, but he's just not worth moving around.
Yeah, he is a literal invalid that needs to be taken care of by Kokoro.
Yeah, and I don't know if I feel bad for Kokoro or not, because I feel bad for that she's taking care of this basically individual who completely is incapable of taking care of themselves or contributing in any way. But she also doesn't seem to resent it at all, which makes it hard for me to sympathize with her.
Kokoro is does not change much between the anime and the game. And Kokoro, she does make her entire life revolve around Protag-kun, but they get into deeper reasons why that make a whole lot more sense later.
Right.
It's part of how she was raised and effectively brainwashed. I mean, she had to.
Only reason that I've ever been tempted to go back and watch any more of it is because Carol is adorable. But other than that, yeah, I don't know if that's enough by itself. I don't play the game, so the swimsuit version of things is always OP.
Carol is noteworthy in that if swimsuit Carol is not on your roster, you cannot run a caster team. I
see. Is it like a limited character like they have in FGO?
Yeah.
If you miss them once, you can never ever get them.
She has one more banner that she'll be featured on for the next 4 years, and it's coming up next summer. And she just came out last summer.
Wow.
I see.
Yeah, so Carol is quite popular in both the meta Pinecone community that actually plays the video game for the video game, and the fan base because she's Carol. Everybody loves Carol.
You would be remiss not to, I'm sure.
I'll find an adequate picture to describe this as fall continues.
I don't know if I've got much more to continue on to, since that's by and large what I've had time to look at. Honestly, I haven't seen very much this season that even draws my interest, because so much of it is just like
Wow.
the same old. Well, I've continued watching How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom, but that's very similar in a lot of ways to the Raising a Nation Out of Debt thing. They start in similar situations, except one's an isekai and one is sort of like a misfit royal. But they're roughly the same story in a lot of ways. There are a few things that I might poke at, but there's like a couple of stories that seem to be just more or less straight up gender swap stories of various kinds, and I'm like, you know what? I don't really get it.
Fun once in a while. There is such thing as Odin on an individual trope.
Yeah, like you reincarnating as a girl when you weren't a girl before.
That worked better when gender roles in society were not so fudged up.
But
like
the thing
they
is
become
that
nowadays.
In that environment, then it becomes a cause for drama more than anything else.
Yeah.
Because of the difficulty in adaptation. But now it's just a thing for hijinks, and they're always the same hijinks.
Yeah, and it never changes. It's the same story every time. So I just groan when I see it now.
Yeah, but that seems to be popular merged with isekai for this season. So I think the season is, unless I get like a real strong recommendation from people, mainly I think I'm probably going to focus on just continuing to watch Demon Slayer for as long as it continues to run. And there's not really much else, because Attack on Titan has pretty much pile drive the notice of any other series away.
Yeah.
Because it's all anybody cares about is Attack on Titan for whatever reason. Like I don't have any affinity for that story whatsoever, and I don't think that I could go back to it, because
I think
I'll have to rewatch the early part, and the early part is just raw, distilled cringe.
It is.
So I've been poking at the last Attack on Titan season, but I stopped. I stopped following Attack on Titan when it got to part 1 of the final season, because we went right back downhill into hot garbage that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the meme that I've seen going around is that the main character is basically powered by being an incel.
Yeah,
like he's mad he can't sleep with his adoptive sister, and this is the driving force behind his rage.
It gets really bad. Oh, that one didn't post. I will attempt to correct that.
But yeah, honestly, for me, the highlight of the season so far has been like the New Year's episode of El Malloy Case Files.
Oh dear, that sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
I need to watch it because
it's got Toko in it.
It's got Toko in it.
It's got Toko.
Like Toko do.
She's just a twisted and horrible individual. As much of a money-grubbing lunatic as her sister is, at least she's tolerable.
Let's face it, though,
evil.
Wave kind of brings a lot of it on himself.
I don't think Toko's evil, though. I think that Toko's just a regular Magus. Like, she's one unit standard Magus who just happens to be basically immortal and incredibly powerful, but resents that she's not the most powerful and the most immortal. Yeah. So she's a typical Magus.
Yeah, sounds a bit standard there.
Oh, dear me. I'm trying to find a specific Carol GIF to add to the collection, and I cannot find it. Or at least I can't upload it in GIF format.
She is adorable, but if it's required to have a limited character in order to use her preferred teams, then I won't ever be going to play Pinecone, I don't think.
Oh, you can make her base version work if you're not at current content, which you won't be for a while. It's perfectly serviceable. In fact, it's one of the easier ones to rank up.
I don't want to play another gacha because it will murder me.
But
I think that there's probably a time in the not too distant but not immediate future where I basically fall off the FGO train as far as the sort of level at which I've been playing at it now is. And like the first stage is going to be basically stopping doing challenge quests and the difficult quests and events because of the amount of effort required to do it. But I don't know how long that feeling will last because Amazon's really burnt me out badly.
Yeah,
it's got a heavier psychological burden than most of the events because of number one, because of the timing mechanic, and number two, because most events grind centers around a materials shop, right? But the thing with a materials shop is if you are not a completionist, and I'm not, then you can get as much or as little from the shop as you feel appropriate. So you can sort of stop at any time once you've completed the story.
Yeah,
but that's not the case.
That's what I
There's
do.
no shop in Amazons. No shop, just a ladder. Just a brutal ladder.
It's one thing I'll say in Pinecone's favor, and the reason I didn't jump ship on it, it is the least intensive mobile game I've ever played. It takes very little of your real world time to do what you need to do to keep progressing in that game every day.
Yeah,
it takes like 10. If you just want to do your daily stuff, it takes maybe 15 minutes tops.
Yeah, I've like I said, I've tried lots and lots of the popular MOBA game. FGO I'm mainly into because of Type Moon, but like Azure Lane I enjoyed a lot, but there's so much to it that it's sort of a game that you play in its own right, and it's not really that it takes a lot of mandatory time so much as I had to pick FGO or Azure Lane. You can't play both because both of them have constant back-to-back events with a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
And you simply don't... If you want to play an event on one, you have to give up an event in the other, or alternatively spend your entirety of your discretionary free time playing mobile games, which nobody wants that.
Yeah.
So
Pinecone literally gives you skip tickets. And if you don't non-stop play, you will have enough to skip every single thing as long as you clear it once.
Yeah, so in Girls Frontline, I stopped playing simply because it was very, very, very complicated to learn. You can play it badly for the first few levels, and then after that you'll just hit a brick wall of difficulty because the game is not friendly to you. It wants you to learn how to play properly. And if you don't, you'll have a very frustrating time. And there's a lot of strategy to how to play. And for a similar reason, I gave up on Arknights, because Arknights it requires you to have an intimate understanding of tactics game logic, and since I don't play tactics games, it was just basically too burdensome to learn a whole new genre from scratch. Like it's a sort of tactics game tower defense hybrid. And I think that it would appeal to a lot of people who play those types of games because each stage is sort of like a discrete puzzle. And there's lots of people like that kind of thing.
I kind of like the gameplay of Arknights, but it's also a gacha waifu game.
Yeah, it's a gacha. Well, it's not just a gacha waifu game. That's the thing that really distinguishes it because it has a lot of husbandos.
It does.
Who are on average, from what I saw early on, they are more popular than the waifus.
Yeah. The point is, though, it's a very niche market. There's not that much of an overlap between people who like waifus or husbandos and people who like those really hardcore tactical.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's quite like that because it is in the mobile format where it's sort of like a puzzle stage that you can hold in your hands and do in the space of a few minutes.
Yeah.
So I think that it does actually fit the format quite well. But yeah, it is still a gacha. It has all the properties of a gacha. And the story is apparently unspeakably depressing. It's basically like everyone in the world is dying of cancer forever. It's basically the story.
The world is screwed. There's no saving it. Everyone's going to die. The end.
I got the character that I wanted as my first, however many stars is the most stars pull. But after that, I just couldn't keep playing. Like, Exocia is a really cute character, and she's extremely powerful if all you're interested in is a cannon that makes things die. But yeah, the game was too hard for me because I just don't have the sort of grounding and the logic of the way those systems work, and I would have to learn the whole genre from scratch to play it. And of course, at that time I was also simultaneously playing FGO and Girls Frontline and Azure Lane, so I would have died the death if I had tried to play that. But yeah, I'll drop it there since I've been talking for quite a long time now. But yeah, so anime season is a damp squib. FGO abused me severely over the past week, and I'm glad to see the back of the current event. And I really still want to play the story, but can't get around to it because the game won't give me enough time to do so. And I still can't play another gacha because the time. I still have to work. I still have to be a responsible adult, which is like the worst thing in the world, apparently.
Alright, So we should take a break, and then we'll come back and do, I don't know, something.
If you were curious about any of the anime that Vol was talking about, this time I went to Honest Bob's and screen capped the summaries and posted them as images in the live show chat, nice. Right above the absolutely massive amount of Carol GIFs I dug out of Discord. All right, we'll be right back, folks. Here's some music. Carol doesn't like bugs.
There are a lot of things that Carol doesn't like, but she very rarely gets her way.
We're going to keep talking about gacha. You talked about gacha all through the break as well. It's time to change the subject.
All right. We're still on Yaltu's weeks. We skipped half of Fern's week because he had to focus on a boss fight.
There's no news, but we might as well just as part of the news.
Sure, we can do my week. I don't. Okay, yeah. So, you got anything else before I jump into whatever I'm gonna try and come up with?
Nope.
Okay. So, all right, my week. I was completely MIA from the internet this week because I was just too busy.
Noticed.
I didn't have time to do anything, like at all. I poked at the GBA collection of Castlevania games that they stuck up on PC a while ago, and I haven't even got close to beating one of the games in the collection. So I don't have a lot to say on that. So I guess to fill my week slot and to buy us some time, I can dip into what I did the previous 2 weeks because we kind of ran out of time when we were doing our weeks then. Sure. So I'll talk about 2 games I played for a while now. And they both took me a while to go through. One of them, when I finally sat down and played it, it was actually fairly short. And the other one, because of stuff I've mentioned in the past, it took me forever to get through it. And the first one I'll talk about is Grime. I finished this one pretty quickly. It's another Metroid-style game, because of course. And it was clearly very inspired by select games. And it's inspired so much that there are Easter eggs to the games it's inspired by all over the game, in wall paintings and stuff. And the biggest one is Salt and Sanctuary with Grime. That's the 2D Dark Souls. And I'm not saying that as like a game journalist does. Salt and Sanctuary is literally 2D Dark Souls. Every mechanic is cribbed from Dark Souls in some way.
Hold on, is Grime the one that has those really surreal and disturbing character designs?
Yeah, all the weird, disproportioned humanoid rock people.
Yeah, I watched a VTuber, I don't remember which one, play that, and it was just frankly disturbing.
Yeah, it is really weird. And the story for the game, because it also draws from that style of storytelling, is told mostly through item descriptions of the environment and the few NPCs you can meet. There's no real through line in the story. Basically, in this world, you wake up in a cavern as a naked human shaped rock dude with a black hole for a head. And you run around the world and you find other rock-like creatures that are very deformed, but still have human characteristics. So they have tiny torsos and giant heads, or their limbs are proportioned strangely, or they're look like a pot with an arm attached to it, single arm. And this whole society is divided into castes based on how closely these creatures look like humans. And since you're a very well proportioned relative to the rest of the cast human looking thing, except for the big black hole on your head that you have for a head, they all are either in awe of you because you're the most humanly proportioned thing out there, or they hate you because they feel like you were born with something they've been working on. The people in this world will literally chip away and have parts of their body destroyed to make themselves more proportional, and graft replacement parts on.
Bleak.
To look, yeah, it's a really dark setting in that way, until you get to the very last area where it seems like it's happy, and you see a bunch of semi-fleshy human-looking dudes that are all partying and happy to see you. And then they're celebrating the fact you're about to kill all of them, and they want you to do it.
Oh, great.
It's a very strange game. The level design is really strong in the game. It's its best part, I think, in that the environments are just cool to go through and they're fun to navigate. There's a lot of areas that you can keep coming back to with new and different power-ups to get somewhere. And generally, the platforming, while unforgiving in some sections with its with almost blind jumps, is still fun enough. You can intuit where to go if you played this type of game before. And I enjoyed my time through it. My complaint about it, though, is even if you 100% this game, it's a really, really short game. And they still want $25 when it's not on sale. It's on sale right now, but they want $25 for this game if it's not on sale. And that's a bit too much for what is effectively a 7-hour experience. And it just ain't that much better than a generic piece of this subgenre to really warrant quite that high of a price. If you can get it for under 15, it's probably worth picking up. But it's 25 is just a bit higher than I would price this. Though with inflation now, I guess that's getting closer to acceptable for something like what we got with this game. You know, if your wages ever rise to compensate for it, which they won't for a while, by the way. So yeah, it gets a positive recommendation from me, though I would wait for a sale. So that's about
disturbing.
It is weird, but if that's not a problem or that's a plus for you, then you'll probably have a good time with it. Next is one of the two franchise namers for the subgenre I like to play, and that's Metroid Dread. I finally beat it.
Yay!
It took me 2 months to beat this game.
Yay!
And that is not a ringing endorsement.
Yeah, I mean, this takes you longer than most games. Most games
true.
you beat inside 24 hours, so...
This game has one of the worst cases of lawnmower map I've had to put up with in a while. And for those that don't remember what I mean when I say lawnmower map, if you walk in
every square,
yeah, the map will only light up sections that your character's body has physically touched in a lawnmower map. So you find yourself cutting the air in the room like it's grass on an uncut lawn to fill in the map. And this is incredibly obnoxious in any game that does it. And Metroid Dread has this in spades, where when you walk into a room, it will be the equivalent of like 12 character heights tall and 10 character lengths long, for instance. You will only fill up by one section of that one square room where Samus is standing, which means you have to climb 12 character heights high 10 times to fully fill in the map for that room.
It's just needless, tedious, busy work.
Now, you do not need to do this, but if you don't do this, your map is going to have a bunch of random lines running through it that are going to confuse you as to where you've been and what you got.
Huh?
So, what you start obsessively doing after the first 2 or 3 areas is lawnmower mapping. And this is the most obnoxious thing you can have in one of these games. Developers, please stop doing this.
Room, see room.
Are there people that like it?
Is that why? I do not know. Like the last really, really bad offender was Borderlands 3.
I still haven't played that.
Yeah, I kind of wish I didn't. But yeah, that game is not a good game either. But otherwise, Metroid Dread's okay. I'm not going to give it a recommendation because the subgenre has evolved past what Metroid is at this point. Metroid is not learning enough of the lessons the rest of the people that make games in this subgenre have figured out. Stuff like how to make the map more functional. Just small usability improvements. Having the ability to pop the map screen to any zoom level you want when you open it. Stuff like they finally put markers for the map, but the markers don't resize. So if what you're looking for is a very small point in a room, you have to put the big honking marker on the room and can't mark where it is. The combat, while better than other Metroids, at this point, a decade and a half behind this subgenre of games where they figured out how to make bosses challenging while still making every upgrade you get feel impactful, but still make the bosses technically beatable if you don't go upgrade hunting. But Metroid hasn't figured that out yet. If you do go out and actually explore the map and backtrack, you come back with a gajillion health and can face tank everything the boss does, except for the Kraid boss, because he's at a wonky point in the game where you can't really go back after you enter his room until after you beat him.
Kraid,
so,
really?
Yeah. I mean, he's a good boss fight because you're limited in your resources, but they just kind of drop the ball with all the other ones, and that you can just face tank over half of what they do.
Yeah, that's not good.
And you don't ever have to learn the boss fight. And if you're just putting a boss fight like that in your game, just put a giant wall against that I have to shoot through for 10 minutes. That would be the same thing. The boss fights just to me are tedious if I can face tank everything they do. They're not fun. So it just needs to catch up to where all its competitors are. Like you got Grime, which its boss fights you actually do have to learn them because the main mechanic in that game is a very generous parry, where you have to look at what attacks are parryable, and they if an attack does not have a glowing red aura around it, you can parry it. And if you successfully parry with perfect timing, you get some of your resource you can spend on healing back. And the bosses generally have chunky health bars that take a while to take down. And you have to really learn their attack patterns because they all hit hard, but none of them are unfair, and you can beat them if you have lower stat pools and because you haven't been exploring. That seems right. Hollow Knight has a similar deal where its bosses are all relatively difficult, but none of them are outlandishly hard. And a little bit of practice and learning their tells, and you'll get them down pat in no time. But Metroid just hadn't got there yet. We're still at, did you get all the E-tanks that are available to you before this boss? You can just literally sit here and shoot it. And ignore everything it does.
Yeah. That franchise has been in hibernation how long now? 15 years?
Yeah, and that's the problem with Metroid as a franchise right now, I think. Yeah. It puts itself into periods of hibernation and then comes out and makes a few of the innovations that people that continued its subgenre that the subgenre is named after for those entire 10 years had already figured out sometime in the interim, and they act like the game seems like it's exciting because it's got this new cool thing that may be new to Metroid, but everybody else has figured this out along the way, and you don't have anything new to bring to the table yet either.
Yeah.
So as a game, Dread doesn't get a recommendation from me. I would say if somehow a miracle happens and this game goes on sale, it won't, because it's a Nintendo game. But if you can get it on the cheap, like $10, yeah, go for it. Otherwise, there are better options. Unless you're just starved for the subgenre because you've played everything in it so far, then it's maybe passable at 15-ish. But it's just I can't give it a solid recommendation. I didn't enjoy my time with this game nearly as much as I wanted to. Though, I will say one good thing about the game. For a Metroid game, they have to have a reason for Samus to need to go collect power-ups again. And this time, the reason wasn't totally stupid.
Because she didn't get permission.
So, usually it's something stupid like you crashed on the planet and somehow you dropped your bag effectively in the crash, or,
The airline lost my luggage.
There's just been a couple of cases where Samus has arrived somewhere and she just forgot to bring her stuff. Let's face it.
Yeah.
She's not the best at hanging on to her things.
Yeah, they had a stint for a while where they just didn't explain it, and I think that actually worked better than, like, anything to do with command said so they took the weapons back.
Yeah.
Or you can't use them.
Running through the Lava zone, even though she's actually got the Varia suit, she doesn't use it because she didn't get permission to.
Yeah. So in this game, you actually get to meet a Chozo warrior right out of the gate.
Oh, nice.
And this guy is a complete badass relative to Samus. He kicks her butt up and down the little temple they fight in. And when she comes to, he has ripped he's damaged her suit so badly that her equipment just broke, I think. And you find out later that, I'm just going to go ahead and spoil this reveal because the story isn't the reason you play a Metroid game, that this is her adoptive Chozo daddy.
Yay, Chozo daddy.
When she was living with the bird people. And that he is actually a crazy, militaristic, megamaniacal individual. And you suddenly understand why Samus could have some daddy issues. But, and his boss fight is the one good boss fight in the game. He's the final boss. And he's a proper 4-phase boss fight with mechanics you actually have to learn because the fight goes on for so long. So yeah, he is a good boss fight and the best part of the game. And the story's a proper continuation of the Metroid series. Finally, we pick up right after Metroid Fusion, which is where we left off before we started doing reboots and side stories. So we finally get a proper continuation of the story. And for what it is, there isn't much story in these games. It isn't bad. It's not good, but it's not bad. So I'll give it props for that. For this series, when I'm talking about story, is higher praise than you would think. So yeah, that's Metroid Dread. The other piece of media that I watched a few weeks ago, I had it on the other screen while I was doing something else, probably playing one of those 2 games I just mentioned. But I threw a dart at a dartboard in my brain, and which actually means I just opened up Honest Bob's and selected dub and clicked on an anime at random.
Oh no.
And I found one that wasn't terrible. I don't have a whole lot of super positive things to say about it, but it is very
that's what's most common, in my opinion. It's not actually that common for anime to be absolutely terrible, but it is very common for them to be quite nondescript.
Yeah, so nondescript isn't the word I would use for this, in that it has an interesting-ish premise despite constraining itself to video game logic. I'll post it in live show chatting on. And it's banished from the hero's party, I decided to live a quiet life in the countryside.
Okay.
This sounds like a generic light novel title because it's a generic light novel. But it gave me vibes of like the guy had just watched one of the big explanations for how origins work in the Nasuverse before he wrote this thing. Because that's the premise of this story is, in this world, people are born to a specific gift, and it is their purpose in life. And their personality gets tailored around this, whether they want it to or not. So, like, for the protagonist, he was born with the blessing of the guide, meant to guide the hero. So he's
basically a Disc 1 badass.
Yeah, that has no stat scaling and falls off horribly later. And so, an overambitious caster type that wants to marry his sister kicks him out of the party by telling him everybody hates him, and is really douchey to him in the first episode and forces him out. Now, because we got to have a story, the protagonist is dumb and doesn't just go ask the rest of the party members what they actually think.
Well, I watched a little bit of this. I haven't had time to watch this series, but I watched a little bit of it, and I didn't get that impression. I got the impression that he was trying to convince the main character that he was going to result in harm to his own sister by being not strong enough for the challenges that they were going to face. So I don't think that it was like, oh, well, I mean, I'm too scared to ask my party if they actually hate me, so much as he didn't want to ask his sister if he was going to be a hazard to his sister because his sister's not unbiased on the issue. And so he left her, not because he was afraid people wouldn't like him, but because he was afraid they wouldn't be honest with him if he was a liability.
Yeah. The reason he leaves isn't very important to the story until a little bit later. And the way it resolves itself comes off as just... It's hard to describe, and I don't want to quite spoil it, but it gets resolved in a way that makes me remember it more the way I saw it, but I might be misremembering a bit because I wasn't really paying attention at first. So he goes off into the countryside and finds a quiet village and sets up shop there and is secretly doing small mercenary jobs on the side while he tries to save money to open a shop to live a quiet life. and he runs into a former adventuring companion that would sometimes show up and help the party in the past. And she's a very busty, very blonde, very normal-ish acting girl with a few hang-ups from her past, but otherwise just a normal girl. And they hit it off right away and get pseudo-married.
So I didn't like the pacing of that, and as far as I saw it, like, it's made pretty clear that that the girl has been crushing on the guy for a long time, but the guy has never given any distinct impression that he had any particular feelings for her. But later on, the story communicates as though it was already mutual.
Yeah,
because the passage of time is really janky from the part of the series that I've seen.
Yeah, there are a lot of flashback scenes, and I think it would have benefited a lot from taking some of the flashbacks that happen and show their relationship in the past, and showing that to us before they meet up and talk together, and get pseudo married. That would have helped a lot.
The thing is, them getting pseudo married seems really wonky because of your inability to perceive the amount of time that has passed at any given point in the show.
Yeah, it is very hard to tell how long things are taking, and you have to make a lot of assumptions as you go on. And the rest of the story is his adventures, not really so much focused on exclusively them two, but they're the running through line through everything, and that they just have a relatively wholesome relationship in the middle of a small town, and the events that come with that as trouble comes to the town, where people find a way to create a drug that modifies or exploits a user's natural gift or origin, and amplify it, replace it, or reduce it. And the other half of the story is following his sister's party, which I don't know how Sage Man didn't see this coming, but they're all really ticked off that the only guy that could cook or do any of the normal stuff got kicked out of the party because this guy's a douchebag.
Well, the thing is that you've got to keep in mind is that the guide may only be Disc 1 nuke abilities. Like, they're not ever going to scale into the end game. But he has all of them. All of them. And, and everybody else in the party is a super hyper specialized combat hero.
Yeah, so they lost their generalist, effectively. And he has...
The party has no rogue, who is the backup trap handler.
Yeah, it's...
Just to throw Sage Man at it, he's got some hit points left.
And they point out, he was really good at in-battle management as well. He has no skills or gifts and abilities that are exclusive to him, but he has all of the ones that are generic to everybody. And this is like everything from acrobatics mastery, where he can slow fall by sliding down walls, to identifying plants. And they just fired that guy from the party, and now they have nobody that can do all this stuff. And everybody actually didn't dislike him. The Sage guy was talking through his teeth, or lying through his teeth when he told Protecun.
But I don't know. Like, I watched the beginning part of I haven't watched the whole story, but I watched the beginning part of the story more recently than you, and I don't remember it that way at all. Like, he didn't mention how anybody else in the party felt about him at all. He only talked about the utility.
This is yeah. Oh well, in the very first scene, yeah, I guess so. I'm just I'm remembering the campfire scene afterwards more than anything, because that's where I started really paying attention to what was going on. Where they're all having to sit down, and everybody's like, "You did what?" Or "He did what?" And they think one of the party members is convinced that Sage Dude killed him, and if he did, she's going to come back and rip his head off. And so she goes out looking for him, and then two of the other guys pick up and leave, and they go out looking for him. And the only reason one party member stays with the hero is so that the hero isn't alone. And the hero is Protecun's sister. And I was so worried this whole time. Oh no, they're gonna try and set up love triangle with his sister eventually. And eventually they do meet. Around episode 9 or 10.
From what I could tell, it's not. From what I could tell from what I've seen, they don't make it clear that the hero is allowed to have emotions at all.
So that's a big source of conflict, because her gift is so powerful and has so much influence on her life. She's basically a robot trapped inside of her own brain. and that she doesn't want to do most of what she does. And coming to the town that has recently dealt with a drug that can manipulate your origin, she finds a way to suppress it and express all this to her brother and the friends she has left.
Well, gift suppression wasn't the drug. Gift suppression was the wild elf concoction, wasn't it?
Is it the wild elf thingy? But I'm trying to be vague about it so I don't spoil it for people.
Well, I was mentioned in an offhanded way, not even as a plot point.
Yeah. So yeah, she comes to the town and can express why her gift is such a burden. And I think a lot of the general idea about how that mechanic works in the world, like there's a kid that has the gift of bar brawler, but he's still a kid. So he gets into random fights and is trying to control his violent urges. And there's kids that are scared of getting their gift because they're afraid it won't be compatible with how they feel as a person right then, because it can really mess you up. And that part of the story is really interesting. And I thought the wholesome stuff with Protag Kun and other lady whose name I forget was not super interesting. Was nice fun when they were having good times together. So it doesn't get a hard recommendation. Playing house. But it doesn't get a hard recommendation from me. But it was better than what I expected from a random show I just turned on a whim.
It's because your greatest fears were alleviated.
That is probably not playing a small role in how much I liked it. So it gets a maybe from me.
From what I've seen, I wouldn't go out of my way to watch it, but if you're bored and you've got nothing better to do and the season is full of trash, then you could probably watch something worse than that.
Yeah. For a dart at a dartboard, it was a positive hit, but and I've been talking more positively about it than I probably should be, because I didn't like it as much as I'm making it sound like I do. But I still I don't feel like it was a waste to have it on the other monitor while I did something else.
Yeah,
that's some enjoyment.
I'm actually talking it down more than I disliked it, in the opposite way. And the part of the reason why I liked it more than I'm letting on is because of the other crap that I've watched the last 2 seasons.
Yeah. So it's already, as you can tell from this conversation, starting to fade out of memory because it's not particularly memorable, but that's something to kill time with. It's not bad.
It seems to me like an incredibly generic and forgettable contribution to a season that's not going to make you want to bash your skull against a brick wall while watching it, which I consider to be a plus.
Yeah. So that's the one anime that's new that I've watched probably in a year or two. And the only reason it got watched was on a whim. So yeah.
Random pick.
Yeah, and it was totally random too. I just went to Honest Bob's and said, I wonder what will happen if I just click a random anime from current season that has a dub, so I can put it on the other monitor. So that's how that happened. So yeah, other stuff that I could fill time with, can't really think. I've been very, very busy the last 3 weeks. That what I've told you encompasses more. Took more than 3 weeks to do for me, because Dread ran through an entire 3 months until I finally completed it. So,
all right.
Or actually 2 months, but still, same thing. Because the last 3 weeks at work have just been a nightmare. This week was nothing special. It's just the raw amount of work I had to do almost killed me. On Thursday, I had 9 projects going simultaneously. Not things to do, full projects. Like, I had 9 email chains that were actively going all day on Thursday. And that doesn't include the phone calls I had to make to them to clarify stuff or get answers or explain something to somebody or what have you. It is just a total cluster F at work right now, because we just got so much stuff in the oven that needs to be moved around and have stuff done to it. It is driving me up the wall, and I need to be able to come up for air soon, or I'm going to go crazy.
Alright, shall we look at a bit of news?
Yeah, we can do that. We don't have much.
We don't have much. The biggest thing...
Well, everybody seems to have dropped everything and started playing Pokemon.
Yes, they have, including me. And I'm doing it right now, as you may have noticed. I am getting my... really big and angry. So, Pokemon Legends Arceus launched this week, and it's basically everybody wrapped up in it. I am really, really liking this game. I wasn't sure coming into it exactly what to expect. Basically, Pokemon Breath of the Wild, but yeah. I know it's going to sound hyperbolic to say this, but it's not really that much. But this game probably actually sets or does more for the franchise than every other game in the last 20 years combined.
Well, I mean, it's not hard since...
It's not a high bar.
The only thing that the previous entries have done is incrementally extend the Pokedex.
Yes.
Plus generational gimmick that they throw out almost immediately.
Yeah. So they've basically taken the whole formula and given it a good shake. So you still have the basic combat, as you can system. However, when you're not in combat, the trainer performs a much more proactive role. So you can actually capture plenty of stuff without even engaging in combat by sneak. If all your Pokemon get KO'd, then that's not game over immediately. Still run away. If the trainer gets KO'd, then you... So what they've done is, you're in the Hisui region, which is the Sinnoh region, circa whatever time period. For once, we're actually in a world where people aren't psychopathically obsessed with Pokemon. People are actually more scared of them.
Oh, they're sort of like mysterious creatures with superpowers, basically.
Yeah, basically, here's these terrifying things that are throwing lightning or whatever around, and they blow stuff up, and they kill people. They actually say they kill people. I'm running out of Pokemon, and I've got to run away, otherwise I'm going to die. So yeah, that's that whole shift in the setting. There's this whole B team, like you're on the obligatory team this time, which is Team Galactic. Not Galactic... Galactic Team, not Team Galactic. They're different, apparently.
That's not confusing at all.
It sounds like the Judean People's Front and the People's Front of Judea.
Yes. I go over there, am I? Probably.
You have no Pika Man, Fern.
You've got... We're in an ice area, and here's this guy with no... He's going to be cutting icebergs with his...
So, Fern, I've noticed that all your Pika Man have died.
Yes.
But that is not a game over for you.
That is not a game over. You can still run away as the trainer. If the trainer gets KO'd, then immediately that's game over. Kicks back to town, and you will lose all the items you're carrying on you. Which tangents nicely into the multiplayer. There isn't a whole lot. You can trade, and you can find people's packs that they've dropped when they're KO'd. If you find someone else's pack, you can send it back to them. They'll send you back some points for it, which you can use to get rare items. So that's basically the extent of the mod.
So there's no PvP battle lane at all?
No, not that I've found anyway. It might be a little bit in the end game, but yeah. So, to that end, I'm going to say they've actually upped the difficulty. Again, not a high bar. They've changed things around enough that it's at least feels a bit new. The biggest thing...
Well, the last time they tried a difficulty up was the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon.
Yep.
And the Pokemon fans cried about it super hard.
They did that by just basically making the AI not completely ridiculously dumb.
Yeah.
In this case, they've shuffled around how a bunch of stuff works. First and foremost is how level scaling works. Levels aren't the be-all and end-all anymore. Previous games, like if there was a big level difference, you'd actually start seeing penalties applied to offense. It's basically that. it would start affecting how effective you were against the other. That doesn't apply anymore, largely because you've got the alphas running around. They are generally high level. So a level up will still get you better stats, and those stats will make a difference, but the level difference itself doesn't. It took me a little while to figure out exactly what they did there. The other big thing that they've changed is how effort values work. Previous games, effort values would be as you fought and won battles, depending on what you fought, you get 1, 2, 5 points a given stat. So your Pokemon would naturally grow stronger just because it was you. That doesn't happen anymore. Instead, you've got your effort values are still there, but you need to manually increase them. And the most efficient way to do that is by catch and release. You catch a whole bunch of stuff you don't want, you release it, that will give you increased stats. Stats are not nearly as big an increase as old school effort. They make a difference, but not that huge.
Because in previous Pikaman games, there were thresholds you could hit that would KO certain... I'm not sure how you would say it, but, certain brackets of Pikaman for whatever Pikaman you were using.
Yeah.
Because there was generally blobby stop points at certain HP and defense values, where if you got enough offense, you could KO them in one less hit. And there was, if you had enough speed, you would outclass certain blobs of Pikaman that had that as its base speed.
Yeah. And your Pokemon would hit a threshold where they just could not hope to get enough HP to overcome that damage level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that said, that meant there were actually Pokemon that were competitively just bad.
Yeah, there's a series on YouTube I used to turn on in the background that is done by Fault Swipe Gaming that is called Was Blank Actually Any Good or something like that? Or How Good Was Blank Actually? And they pick a
What's the most surprising one?
Probably...
Everybody thought was good, but turned out not to be.
I can't think of any of them that were surprising because it's very obvious what the OP ones are in Pikaman.
Yeah.
But like a bunch of the steel types will surprise you with just how bad they are.
I tend to like steel typing, but
steel is a dumb type.
It is still a dumb type.
Generally speaking, steel is like you're asking somebody to punch you in the nads.
Yeah, they're a really strong built defensive type, but the problem is they have so many weaknesses against what that are very splashable that they just kind of fall over.
Not to mention that they're either resistant to it or they're weak to it, and there's no middle ground.
Yeah, it's if all they got to do is pull out something that's super effective against it, and they crumple like paper.
Yeah. As much as I like steel types, they're... Anywho, so yeah, they've changed that up. So even if you fully spec out your Pokemon, then it's going to become a powerhouse. But it's still not unbeatable. Type is king. So whoever has type advantage is going to 9 times out of 10.
So you can't do the type of playthrough that most people had done at least once.
Nuzlocke?
I would think. No. In the old type of games, where if you just want to casually go through the game and just kind of collect stuff, or you're young and it's your first time through, like I did this my very first time I played.
You only use your starter forever.
Yeah, you only use your starter, and it becomes an unkillable monster that solos the whole game.
Oh yeah, you cannot do that. Especially early on. Like I started with Cyndaquil, Typhlosion.
With a weird scarf-looking effect on his neck, I noticed.
Yeah, hang on. You can actually just throw your Pokemon out and just let them sit on the ground. Throw him out. This is the regional Typhlosion. He doesn't have the scarf out of them. Because I actually tied his flames to his behavior, so which is actually kind of cool.
What are you wearing? I tabbed back into the YouTube tab.
Oh, this?
I can't. It's I got a delay on the stream by about 10, 15, 20 seconds.
Yep.
So it takes a bit for... Yeah, you look like... Okay, so you just turned into a Pika Man?
No, I called him out.
No, I meant your character was like a Sneasel or something.
This is... Was it I forget what it's actually called, but this is Sneasel's new evolution.
Okay,
so this is...
Protag-kun can just turn into that?
No, Protag-kun is, if you look closely, in the basket. Those are Protag-kun's eyes. And I love that. You're just in the basket. Yeah, this is how HMs are handled, like the Alola region one. It's a bunch of Pokemon on. So got this one can climb walls. I like so.
Yeah. When you turn back into human for the first time, I just saw like a Naruto ninjutsu poof.
Yeah. So the bear basically digs up buried treasure. Magic moose. They call this a Stantler evolution. It is an evolution for Stantler, but all it does is grow a beard. And then you also get one that fills the role of Surf. Magic Moose basically just gets around really quick. So that's how that's handled. The other biggest change I've found to battle is how speed works. So it is now possible to get multiple turns in a row. Usually 2. I've seen 3, but only in extreme.
Okay. Speed was already a really powerful stat. That's dangerous, buffing it even more.
Well, yeah. But you can now manipulate that, however. Let's talk to this guy. Avoid his rock-hard nipples.
Oh, my.
I mean, we're in the snow region. No shirt.
Also, is your character a boy or a girl? I can't tell.
Boy. Not that it really makes a whole lot of difference between Pokemon characters. They all kind of look the same. Okay.
Oh, I mean, the girls still look like girls. But this character, I couldn't tell until you told me and I started looking for boyish characteristics.
The haircut.
It is the haircut.
The haircut. So, this is how trainer battles also... Trainer battles are very rare. But, when you fight generally one of the clan people, they'll just throw out however many Pokemon they got at the same time. Because I've got Typhlosion, however. So yeah, you can manipulate turn order by using styles on your abilities. You have to master the ability to block it, but you'll get that over time, or you can manually. So agile abilities do less damage, but will bump up your turn order, and strong does the opposite.
Yeah, I see a little trails in the of Cold Steel / in the sky. Who's up next to meter over there? Yeah,
you see me just messing with it.
Yeah, and it changes in real time based on what type of ability you're picking.
I remember that from FF10.
Yeah, I remember my typings here. Oh, just Bailey's dark, so yeah. What? Bye. Yeah, as you can tell, I have pumped up the stats of my starter.
Yeah, is there a delay mechanic?
To wait when you don't have a turn?
No. To kick an opponent down in the turn order.
No, not that I've noticed.
Oh, okay.
Because
inevitably, whenever
if you have both, that's it. Game over.
That's
Mechanics are broken.
In the game with that turnometer, if there's any form of delay mechanic, that's the only thing that's important.
Yeah. There are moves in Pokemon that do affect speed of an opponent, their speed stat, but I haven't seen any pop up.
Are you ever able to have more than one Pika Man fielded at a time?
Not that I've been able to find, no.
Okay.
You can bring multiples out just to have them sit around, and you can pop them out for screenshots and whatever. But not in battle. Also, everyone looks like they're going to freeze to death. This is fun.
I hate ice areas in games. I always have.
I've always hated ice areas.
And I hate the aesthetic. I hate the outfits that are associated with it.
Yeah.
And I hate ice mechanics that every video game feels the need to cram in there.
Every soundtrack for an ice zone has sleigh bells in it. Every single one.
Yeah, it's
Even
always
the Iceborne one did that.
I can't remember, honestly. I think
I
it
didn't
did,
play much of
actually, yeah.
Iceborne. Not gonna lie, part of the reason I was not so hyped to play Iceborne as you guys were was because it was an Ice Themed expansion. I really, really hate snow and ice levels. I'll take a sewer level over a snow and ice level.
Yep. So let me see if I can actually get to the Lord fight, the big bosses. You don't have any gyms. These are just the Lords. They're the big rulers of the various regions. I really like what they've actually done with these boss fights, because they're not just standard Pokemon boss fights. You do most of the fight as the trainer.
Please tell me you bust out fisticuffs.
Unfortunately, no. You have to throw medicine bags, or whatever they call bombs, at the opponent. But what that generally entails is running away screaming, especially for the Electrode fight. Run around screaming until you get an opportunity to send a Pokemon at it to increase its stun time, and then. But that said, it is entirely possible to beat bosses without seeing the single Pokemon.
Well, I mean, that makes sense because people in this world would have been having to deal with them for a long time.
Yeah. Incidentally, you've got a few themes running through this game which are going to be eye-rollingly obvious to later Pokemon.
So, are you like supposed to be like the great god Arceus has sent you to this other world in order to put civilization on the track to cooperation between Mons and men?
Possibly. The problem is Arceus doesn't really say that. He just says, "Oh, what do you look like? Okay, here's an arse phone. Off you go.
Get all the Mons.
Yeah.
Get all the
Mons. Off you go." And that's it. He kicks you out of the giant space butthole and leaves you to your own devices.
Well, obviously you've got to establish the paradigm of got to catch them all, so that Pokemon, instead of becoming terrifying beasts, become a priceless commodity that everybody must have all of.
Yes. So it's actually been very refreshing just being able to even just go out, explore the world. There's Pokemon wandering around all over the place. They're all logically in places that you'd expect to find them. Please stop doing this.
What is with Japanese people making games where there's always a man doing squats?
There's always a man doing squats. Can I get...
Because squats are hilarious?
And because you can't skip leg day.
Like, is this a thing Japanese men just do when they're feeling like it? They just go stand out in public.
Are you suggesting people should skip leg day?
No, but I'm suggesting leg day should be in the gym, not out in public with the shirt off doing squats.
Not out in the snow, certainly. Or if you got those two Monster Hunter characters who made it to Final Fantasy, doing squats extremely fast. Incidentally, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they've done with Avalugg. I haven't spoiled myself because Avalugg is one of the dumbest looking Pokemon.
Dumber than that ice cream?
Dumber than the ice cream. He's a coffee table.
I see a giant space butthole in the sky, Fern. What's that?
That is the giant space butthole.
That you get pooped out of.
You get pooped out of that. There's lightning that zaps all the lords, which sends them all crazy. Apparently, the space butthole has been around before. It has closed, and that
sounds an awful lot like a Monster Hunter story.
Yeah, well, it's a Pokemon story. Every Pokemon story has some sort of ancient legend surrounding them. Like you've got the great god Sinnoh, the two tribes worship. You've got the Diamond tribe who thinks it's a god of time. The Pearl tribe who thinks it's a god of space. You can see
Does
where
that
this
really
is going.
matter? I thought we proved that in our world that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but this is in the past, presumably. And that's actually a bit of a hang-up. Now, I'm starting to see things that really don't add up. Like, I've unlocked at least one item, which is and it's just a modern-day fan. It's not a time-locked thing. You've got people who are mentioning stuff that's happened in modern times, like the Alolan Ride Pokemon. Even though if you go to Sun and Moon, they're saying that that's still a fairly new thing there.
It wasn't just a fad.
So, like, if maybe they forgot. I can understand a fan showing up because there's a giant space butthole in the sky that apparently can drag stuff across the universe from other dimensions.
Yeah,
so
like
maybe
they probably just the knowledge probably just got pooped into the world.
Yeah. Laylee's one of those Pokemon I've just never liked.
That one kicked your butt earlier.
Yeah, that was an alpha, which is the I suppose the gimmick Pokemon this time around. They're basically out. They'll wander around. There's a bunch that are in fixed places, but every Pokemon does have a chance to spawn out.
Are you sure you're a boy, Fern? You threw that ball like a girl.
All Pokemon characters throw. Yeah, but that's the alphas. Basically, is they're big, and they're usually high level, and that's it.
I presume with Pokeballs, you've got to sort of lob them gently so that they don't actually brain the thing that you're throwing them at.
Especially these ones, they're made out of wood and happy thoughts.
Dome the thing with a big old block of wood. You accidentally kill the poor Bidoof you're trying to catch.
Yeah.
You hit a Pidgey as it's coming down to get something, and it just blows up like that pitcher that hit the dub in the baseball game that one time.
Yeah.
Ari's getting a bit high concept for me.
Maybe a bit. But yeah, it's been a fun time. It's just like it's still notably Pokemon. It's just it's new and it feels different.
It's Pokemon, but it's not Pokemon.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a different game for once.
Yes. It's not the same game that they've been remaking for the last 25 years.
I mean, I think half the reason that Pokemon Snap is such a cult classic is that it's not Pokemon. It's just about Pokemon.
Yeah.
Yeah, this game has all the trappings of an experimental side game, which is, I guess, exactly what it is. But it still has the Pokemon aesthetic and through line.
It is apparently the mainline series too, not spin-off.
Well, I think that the big question then will be like how long is it and what level of replayability has it got?
Yeah.
All right.
Because I mean, like there's going to come a cropper if there's really no meaningful PvP, because that's part of what has animated Pokemon for the longest time is the fact that there is at the center of the Pokemon community there's this nucleus of complete psychopaths who are obsessed with knowing everything about Pokemon, and if that facet has no attachment to this, it doesn't matter whether they say it's part of the mainline game, it will still become a spin-off.
So this is probably where this next bit comes in, which is the Pokedex, the be-all and end-all of this game. Everything revolves around the Pokedex because you're actually doing science. Unlike, ticking the box and moving on. So if I open up an entry here, we've got Ghastly. It tells you where it is and all the bio there because I've unlocked all that information, but it also has a checklist of tasks. And every single Pokemon has a checklist. There's various levels on it. So this game
I gotta wait for your video to catch up because I'm way behind here.
Yeah. So this game is going to really appeal to those people with the completionist mindset who really want to go through and do every single thing.
Oh no, I need to not touch this game or I'm gonna be stuck here forever.
Yeah. So just reading off Ghastly's here, you've got 5 levels of catch all the way up to 25, and 25 seems to be about the average first level evolution. Catch them at night, you need to catch 20 of them at night. Defeats 25 of them, which again, defeat with ghost type moves. Times you've seen it use Astonish. So yeah, use it 25 times. So these numbers are fairly average, but there are a few that are really out there, and I'm going to show my the most obnoxious one. Let me see if I can. Probably roughly where you'd expect it to be. There's about 250 Pokemon in there. I'm going to leave...
intimately equated with a Tangrowth. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Oh
my! Here it is! Magikarp!
You splash 1,000 times.
You splash 100 times. Close.
Yeah, you're still scrolling on my screen. You didn't even get to Magikarp yet.
How many PP does Splash have?
Yeah. It's also I need to evolve 10 of them if I want to gold standards. Tick off Magikarp completely. That is. So yeah, if you're a completionist, you've got all the Pokédex entries to fill out. You've also got to find the 28 unknowns once you unlock that quest. Plus the 107 wisps. Plus all the poem fragments, which are there to unlock. They're just buried around the place.
Oh no, I'm not doing the unknown alphabet collecting again.
Yeah, they're not all in one place. They're hidden around the world.
Okay, that's a bit better because when I was
a collectathon and it's not like a randomly draw this many times.
Yeah,
because when I was a little kid, that task by itself took me at least a week.
Yeah, you don't want to do it. Unknown is still, by the way, the absolute worst.
What do they actually do? Like, I've never played a game that had unknowns in them.
They use ancient power.
What does that do?
That's it.
Yeah, isn't it hidden power?
Oh, hidden power. Sorry, ancient power is different.
What is it?
No,
like Splash? Like, I don't.
No. Hidden power is an ability that is unique in that when your Pokemon is generated in the game, it will have a elemental affinity assigned to a hidden power value. And so hidden power can be any of the elements, but you have no clue which one your Pokemon actually has assigned to it.
Yeah, there used to be a guy around in a building somewhere who would tell you what it was. But initially that value or what type was based on the IV, the inherent values. I haven't noticed if IVs are a thing.
So in general, basically Unknown was just a gimmick Pokemon, but its ability it introduced and its signature ability could be taught to any other Pikaman. And this was really important for the metagame at the time because it allowed any Pikaman to have a type coverage move of its choice if you got lucky with its element that it got for hidden power.
Is this like, oh, well, the last numeral in this stat is X and therefore we're going
Initially,
to...
yeah.
Yes, that's how it was.
That. Like, if this isn't a real example, but like, if your defense value ended in 3 and your attack value ended in 2, then it would have a fire type hidden power, and you wouldn't know what type it is unless you asked the NPC to tell you, or you tested it out.
Yeah, or you just knew how the algorithm worked.
Yeah, so it was just a weird, janky mechanic like that was introduced in Gen 2 for funsies.
Yep.
And the unknown are just meant to be mysterious creatures that can spell out stuff in the alphabet because they wanted to hide messages in the game written in unknown.
Yeah. And they do that again, except the only message that's actually been shown up in this game written in unknown.
Yeah,
that was
and then
after I sat there for like 5 minutes remembering how to read unknown.
I remember the anime would spell stuff wrong.
Just to mess with people.
Anytime there was an unknown hidden message in an episode of the anime, there was like a 50% chance whatever it tried to spell had something spelled wrong in it because it's Japanese people trying to spell stuff in English.
So yeah, this is basically what everybody's been playing with, and starting to see reviews and first impressions come back for it, and by and large, they seem to be very positive.
It's a Pokemon game, so it's going to have positive first impressions overwhelm the internet when it gets released. The criticisms will be a good week or two out before people start really humming and hawing about this wasn't really that fun about it. So
a couple of years ago, I'd say you were 100% correct there. We've had Sword and Shield since then.
Oh, that is true. And Sword and Shield was awful.
Yeah, and we've also had the Diamond and Pearl re-release, which everyone just kind of went...
Yeah, the reason I did not care about this game is because of how bad Sword and Shield was.
Sword and Shield was just bad. Like, they had some neat ideas and all that, but overall, it was just...
I don't think they had any neat ideas at all. I think it was a strict downgrade in everything but platform.
Yeah.
I think that I'm more interested in assessing this from the point of view of, okay, let's strip it of the Pokemon. Let's strip it of the Pokemon entirely. How does it stack up against other vidya? Like, is it better than Monster Hunter Stories, which is a similar sort of collect the creatures and fight things with them game?
Other Pokemon games recently? No. This one?
No, I'm talking about this one specifically because, like I said, I want to strip it of Pokemon context. Like, if you don't have a feeling about Pokemon whatsoever, how does this stack up as a video game?
I'd say it's on par with Monster Hunter Stories 2, but for different reasons. Like, the story's just kind of there. And
the story's just kind of there in Monster Hunter Stories as well.
It is, but at least
because I consider Monster Hunter Stories and Pokemon Stories to be basically the same breed of beast.
Yeah. Usually
there's some ancient random crap that will show up and there'll be a giant monster that has always existed and everybody has heard of it, but or sometimes it's not known and mysterious, and you'll track it down and then you'll beat the tar out of it. Like,
yep.
That's how Pokemon works, and that's also how Monster Hunter works.
Sometimes there's a giant space butthole.
So earlier, Fern, I saw one thing I wanted to ask you about the game.
Yeah.
There was a snowstorm, it looked like, going on. Is that what affected your view distance, or is the render distance in the game that short?
No, weather does affect your render distance.
Okay, because it looked... Okay, that looks much better. Your character was turned around. But you couldn't see anything.
Yeah. Weather...
Yet another reason to hate ice and snow levels.
Yes. So yeah, weather effects will hide Pokemon in the distance, so you can't see them, sneak up on. Makes sneaking really difficult. Because things can just jump out of the fog at you. As you can see, now it's cleared up everything. But that
that's
also,
an
however,
intentional design decision, not a constraint of the hardware.
Yes.
Okay.
How big is the world?
It's pretty big, actually. It's not one continuous world. It is 5 plus the town explorable fields. They're all pretty freaking big.
Like, I mean, but how big is big though? Like, because you're not giving me much context.
Like,
again, let's use say the zone of Monster Hunter Stories that's outside the Wyverian village as our watermark. Is it half the size, twice the size, 10 times the size?
If you go with that as the metric, probably anywhere between 3 to 4 times that size per zone. Right. So it is all big nature area. The whole world is largely untamed, so you might expect that. But if you're familiar with Generation 4, Diamond and Pearl, you'll still find familiar landmarks around the place. There's a few Easter eggs there for people who want to find them. Am I doing a puzzle temple? Why is there a puzzle temple? I take it all back, this game sucks.
You're mad at puzzle temples? I thought everybody who had a Nintendo liked that Zelda game, which was all puzzle temples.
That's the problem, is if it's Nintendo, it's puzzle temple.
Yeah, they love their puzzle temples.
Really do.
Like Metroid has puzzle temples, and Zelda has puzzle temples.
Zelda is all
Mario has puzzle temples. Huh?
Zelda is all puzzle temple.
Yeah, literally. They are temples that are puzzles.
I do not know how people like the Breath of the Wild puzzle temples. They are incredibly brain dead simple and obnoxious as all crap to do because you're fiddling with the stupid controller more than you're trying to figure out how to solve the puzzle.
They were easily the weakest part of that game. Easily. Oh, Reggie's. Not that Reggie.
Reggie Fisa-Gigas.
Reggie Fisa-Gigas.
So have they copied a roster from a particular Pokemon generation, or have they got their own special roster? Or
by and large, they've copied the Sinnoh region roster, so Generation 4. Because you are in the Sinnoh region. Even though it's called the Heat-Suite. Because time, I guess. But they've also put in a few unique spins on it, like you've got a few regional events, such as this Typhlosion. There's a couple of new ones, but most of the new ones are alternate evolutions. Like you've seen that thing with the axe arms in the promotional that one's an alternate evolution of Cypher. Need to really fix. That's actually another thing.
Bronzong is very angry at you, by the way, that we're up to in the video.
Yeah, I'll catch it. That's actually one more thing I really, really like what they've done is once you learn a move, you've learned the move. You don't forget it. Instead, it gets added to a Pokemon's move pool. And from that pool, you can pick 4 moves. And you can change them at any time. Okay. As long as you're not in battle. There's a trainer back in town who will generally teach TM moves. But again, once they're learned, they're learned. What can be learned is unique to each Pokemon, but okay, I've had enough of this.
He made your Typhlosion sleepy.
He did. So yeah, that I'm really liking because the 4 move thing, I think it started off as a kind of a limitation of the hardware, and then it was hung around.
Yeah, it was a limitation of the hardware that they tried to turn into a functional gameplay mechanic, and it just kind of never got updated.
Yeah.
I think that you'd have to be careful updating that one, though, because can you imagine what it would do to the meta if you just had one which had 5 moves instead?
Oh, yeah, that would mess everything up.
But I think what they've got here is fine, because all the current system does by forcing you to perma-forget one is go TM hunting later.
Yeah, so it just adds fiddly busy work. X and they haven't unfortunately fixed Typhlosion's biggest weakness, unfortunately. Kind of leans on fire moves a bit too much. You can have aerial.
Well, most fire starters apart from the OP ones have that problem.
Yeah, it's either that or they become fighting.
Yeah, it's I get so facepalm when I see a fire fighting starter now. I'm just like, can we have any other secondary typing?
Yeah. So they've actually started to do the secondary typing loop. They've used the same one they did in Generation 7. So if I'm remembering correctly, Typhlosion gets Ghost. I think.
Oh, is this a special, like, this regional Typhlosion has a secondary Ghost typing?
He's got a secondary Ghost typing.
And it's only for this regional variation, I assume.
Yeah. Decidueye, I think, is fighting this time around. The fight.
What?
Yeah. Like, regular Decidueye is Ghost Grass. And now he's Grass fighting.
He has I guess he has a bow and arrow.
Let me just double check this, actually. I need to remember. But yeah, they've established a secondary typing wheel that kind of goes the opposite direction to the Grass, Fire, Water one, which has been Dark Ghost fighting. Let's see. I haven't actually looked at the other 2 starters yet. Look like. Yeah, Grass fighting.
Oh, so they just shifted the secondary typing around.
Yeah. Shift the second typing around. And your water type was Water Dark, and that was Oshawott. Samurott is Water Dark.
Ah.
Yeah, that's just kind of been a thing that they've been doing for the last couple of generations. Which I really like. Nice change from having fire fighting all the freaking time. Beyond that, I'm near the end of the storyline. I won't say I'm near the end of the game because I don't know what post-game is. Also, the potential of another zone in the other side of the space battle. Nothing then. Still. Anyway. So I'm going to leave this at that point. Eat up on this Bronzong. Bronzong has it.
Oh yeah. Looking at this, looking at what you got with the game, It looks interesting. Sword and Shield, I don't think I've emphasized just how much that game turned me off Pikaman.
Yeah.
Like Sword and Shield was awful. It was a terrible video game.
Yeah. Honestly, I would have liked the Diamond and Pearl re-release more, I think, if I hadn't just played Sword. I got the DLC apparently, but I never played them.
Yeah, Sword and Shield did so many things wrong that it's. I wonder if just how many people other than us were turned off because of that.
Oh no, we're hardly the only ones.
Yeah, it was genuinely terrible. Everything from embiggening to or emfattening to the stupid open world area, to the story, to the cut down decks. Everything was terrible about that game.
Yeah. At least the cut down decks in this one makes sense. But yeah. Cut down decks in the other one, it was just because hard to make those animation models.
Yeah, try more. You have a $1 billion, Game Freak.
Yeah, they've got a place here. Every Pokemon has a place to be. It belongs. It makes sense. Yeah. If they want to put every Pokemon in this game, they'd probably need a game about 5 times the size of this one. But that said, if they do that and call it an MMO, I don't think people are playing too much.
Yeah, I think that they're just sort of leery of doing it wrong because it would be, you'd have to be a moron not to see how easy it would be to print money by releasing the Pokemon MMO.
Yeah. If they came out and turned out that this was kind of the prototype for that, I think they'd be doing all right. The world's formula does lend itself very well to the MMO, especially the spatial rift system, which is basically a world event.
They can say this is a mainline entry as much as they want for marketing reasons, but everything I'm seeing you play rings of an experimental side game to see a whole bunch of new stuff and see what works and what doesn't, either to stick it in more traditional mainline Pokemon games or to try it for some new project they got down the pipeline they want to eventually put out.
Yeah, like if they'd taken every system from this game, but if instead of making it Pokemon, they made it, here's an obscure one, Jade Cocoon.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Actually, it's a mon-like from PS1. The sequel was awful, but the base game was great. But yeah, it just slap another franchise on it. It would still do well, I think, once word got out. The fact that it's a Pokemon game means the word out, all that. What are these? Reggies are Reggies. I'm going to leave that topic there. What else we got?
For gaming news, basically nothing. The 2 articles I threw in there were me reaching for anything to find because there was literally nothing that happened this week other than Pikaman.
Yeah.
Mostly I've just seen wild speculation about the Blizzard buyout.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. The Elden Ring hype train's starting to get really rolling. But
how far away is that?
Sometime in February.
Yeah, but is it like the very end of February or is it like the 1st of February? Because those 2 scenarios are quite different.
Yeah, I want to say it's middle to the end of February. Let's see. It comes out February 24th, so near the end.
Don't you hate it when you do a puzzle and then you realize you've just key part of it?
Kinda. But I get more frustrated with a puzzle. I don't usually miss the key part of the puzzle. I miss something incredibly obvious about the puzzle that any sane person would have noticed immediately and want to smack myself in the head.
Yeah, I just did. The buttons in order.
So yeah.
In that case, we should be wrapping up.
Yeah.
I don't really have much to talk about as far as news goes this week. I haven't really heard anything of particular note. I'm getting a bit tired of hearing about industry scandals, TBH.
I know. It's what is it this week?
It used to be we could get fired up about them, but they're so common now. It's just
we know everyone in California is a degenerate, all right?
And in France, degenerate.
It's like, oh no, another French Californian got arrested for being, a serial rapist or whatever. That happens like every 5 minutes. Hell,
yeah.
It's. So yeah, that's I guess that's the week for the most part. I'll send us to closing comments unless y'all got anything else. It feels kind of weird in the week here, but I don't have anything.
Yeah, I'm sure as soon as we stop recording, I'll remember something really important and critical that we can talk about. But I can't really think of anything right now. Like most of the stuff that I've seen covered has been concerning either people wigging out over the new Pokemon game or people discussing Blizzard stuff, either this new scandal about Sylvanas being deliberately ruined by Arifuruta or about the buyout or whatever. And there's just I haven't seen much that I would say is particularly interesting.
Yeah.
That is what could I say? Fresh, I guess.
Yeah, like
rather than treating the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah, I took a quick look at the WoW community at one point because what's going on in the WoW community this week? Salt. Okay, nothing new there.
Yeah, I think I saved a picture from the WoW Classic Reddit to keep as ammunition for some discussion at some point. But apparently, the faction imbalance in WoW Classic is so bad that's what it looks like now for some of the more popular servers.
That's how it's been for a few months now. It's if you're on one server or a certain server, you will play a given faction.
Yeah,
it's why the whole we should have cross faction raiding thing has gotten so much traction in past few months is because the whole faction system has become completely degenerate. It's completely
pointless at this point.
It's not serving its purpose anymore.
Yeah. There's that much stuff I think that needs to be done with WoW though to get it back on track. I don't know where you begin with it.
Forget back on track, back on life support.
Back on life support would be one, yeah. Make the game at least enjoyable again to start.
Like the game has had the ventilator pulled out when it didn't need it in the first place, and now it is suffocating from damaged lungs.
That's horrific, but accurate.
Yeah, they made a lot of terrible decisions, but from the word that has been coming out, because since the buyout, that a lot of people on the inside have become a bit bolder now that they know that today's boss is not going to be around tomorrow, and there's been a lot of accusations have been leveled by various people that Blizzard projects in particular have been hamstrung by Bobby personally.
I can believe.
Like I think the most well known one of late is that the reason why the Overwatch 2 project has been so hobbled is that Bobby was absolutely convinced that the best way to make money was to lean into the Overwatch League really hard and constantly divert resources from the team working on Overwatch to fluff up the Overwatch League project that nobody gave a toss about, because he was just stuck in a one-track obsession with trying to monetize the Overwatch League.
Yeah, something that anybody who knows anything about the league told.
Anybody who knows anything about video games, but he doesn't know anything about video games because he's Bobby. It's not his job, but he was, just basically running the show like a tyrant, allocating capital in an incredibly inexpert manner, when that's the whole purpose of the chief executive, right, is to make those calls about the best place to allocate your capital when it comes to increasing value. And he made categorically bad decisions because he just doesn't know what he's talking about.
So we'll see what happens over the next few months on that front.
Yep.
Yeah.
Alrighty,
they
folks.
can't honestly make Blizzard any worse. So there's that.
So yeah. I think we're done. Y'all can have another Carol GIF for the road in the live show chat. Where's a good one? Let's go with that one. That one. So enjoy your live show chat spanned with Carol GIFs.
Oh dear.
And that's about all the substance you're getting from this show. All right, folks. We'll see you next week. Sayonara. Bye bye.